professor of pharmacy at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51, Lively 4th Floor. Hogwarts was not peaceful tonight. Alexis waited until the curfew started and had already quietly sneaked to the door of the room on the 4th floor. The three-headed dog Luwei lay on the ground and slept soundly, unaffected by the suspected intrusion in the evening. Alexis opened the music box and wound the clockwork. Ding 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 ding, the magical sweetness sounded faintly, and two little people emerged from the wooden music box, hugging each other and dancing. Luwei fell into a deeper sleep, sticky saliva dripping all the way and collecting on the ground. Alexis tiptoed into the room, leaning against the wall. Not long after he passed, three sneaky figures, sheltered under invisibility cloaks, came to the door of the room. The sweet sound of music flows from the door of the room and floats in the main building point, paired with the empty corridors and the figures walking back and forth on the walls. It looked a bit eerie. The invisibility cloak stirred for a while, and it seemed that the three Harrys were divided on whether to enter the room. Immediately, the agitation stopped, and the invisibility cloak moved slowly towards the room. Just as they were about to pass Luwei, the music stopped suddenly. The three people under the cloak were stiff, standing stiffly on the spot, not daring to move. Woohoo if woo. Luwei closed his eyes and scratched the central nose with his front paws, as if he was dreaming about something. It didn't wake up. The three of them breathed out, feeling their hearts about to jump out of their throats. Come on, Ron urged in a low voice. SHHH. Harry and Hermione turned their heads and raised their fingers to signal Ron to be silent. Ron crouched and quickly covered his mouth. Woohoo. Luwei moved again. This time, three pairs of eyes opened simultaneously, looking around suspiciously. There was nothing all around. Luwei was very confused. It slowly got up and looked around with its three heads. Its hearing is very sensitive, and it is sure that it just heard something. Luwei poked his head out of the center and approached the door, staring there curiously. What is this? Luwei tilted his head and looked at the exquisite wooden box curiously. The music box has stopped rotating. The two little figures on it have finished their curtain call, and the box is closed. Luwei was a little wary and curious, and couldn't help but slowly stretched out his front paws. Under the cloak, the three Harrys didn't know what Luwei was doing. They stood next to the music box and watched Luwei stretch out his front paws towards them, but not. The three of them agreed that Luwei had discovered them. Didn't you say this cloak can make you invisible? Hermione clutched her wand tightly and looked at Harry and Ron. Ron covered his mouth, his eyes full of fear. Harry pursed his lips tightly, and a lot of strange thoughts came to his mind. Seeing Luwei's paws getting closer and closer. Just when Hermione couldn't help but strike first, the dog's paws passed by the three of them and pulled down the music box on the side. Woo-woof. Luwei tilted his head curiously and looked at the music box nervously. Nothing happened. Luwei's burden was a little bigger, so he stretched out his paws again, pulled the music box in front of him, fiddled with it gently, and started playing with it. The three of them breathed a sigh of relief and quickly got into the room, while Luwei wasn't paying attention. There were no lights in the room, and unlike other classrooms with windows, the entire room was dark. The three of them groped in the dark and took just 2 steps, only to feel that their feet were empty. Ah, wang wang wang. The three people screamed, mixed with the alert bark of the three-headed dog Luwei, and their bodies lost weight and fell rapidly. The cold, damp air whizzed past their ears. They kept falling, and then plop point with a strange and dull impact, it landed on something soft. Harry sat up and groped around. His eyes haven't adjusted to the dim light yet. He felt as if he were sitting on some kind of plant. What the hell is this? Having had the experience of falling from the shrieking shack a few hours ago, Ron didn't dare to touch around, and he froze in place and shouted, I don't know. Harry took out his wand and stood up. It seems to be a kind of plant. It is probably here to reduce the impact of falling. We must be very far away from school. Hermione, who was behind the two of them, sat up and said, to be honest, it's lucky that there are these piles of plants here. Instead of falling on the spider's back, Ron relaxed a lot. What a blessing. Hermione screamed. Look at you two. She jumped up and struggled toward a damp wall point. The reason why she struggled like this was because as soon as she landed, the plant stretched out snake-like tendrils and wrapped around her ankles. As for Harry and Ron, they had unknowingly had their legs entangled in long vines. Hermione finally broke free before the vines could catch her. Now she watched in horror as the two boys tried to tear away the vines, but the more they struggled to free themselves, the faster and tighter the vines became. Stop moving. Hermione shouted at them. I know what this is. It's a devil's trap. Oh, I'm so glad we finally know what it's called. It helps a lot, said Ron angrily, ducking back to keep the vines from wrapping around his neck. You shut up. I'm trying to figure out how to kill it, said Hermione. Please think faster. I can't breathe, Harry gasped, tugging desperately at the vine that was trying to wrap around his chest. Devil's web. Devil's web. What did Professor Sprout say? He said it likes darkness and moisture. Then light it on fire. Harry almost choked. Yes, of course. But there's no firewood here, Hermione shouted, wringing her hands anxiously. Are you crazy? Ron yelled. Are you a witch? To shut up. Hermione pulled out her wand, waved it, and muttered something, and a blue bellflower-like flame shot out from the head of the wand point within seconds. Both boys felt the vines retreating from the light and warmth, loosening their grip on them. The devil's net twisted and twitched, automatically loosening the tendrils wrapped around them, and Harry and Ron finally broke free completely. Luckily you paid attention in herbal medicine class. Breathing heavily, Harry thanked Hermione. Yeah, luckily you still remember that you are a witch, Ron said with lingering fear, leaning against the slippery stone wall. Look what you said. Harry had already calmed down and pointed to the exit. This way the three of them hunched over, holding wands in their hands, and continued to move forward cautiously. Maybe we shouldn't come, Hermione whispered. This eerie environment made Hermione a little discouraged. We're already here, Harry whispered back. Hermione was about to say something else, but was interrupted by Ron on the side. Listen. Ron listened intently. What is this sound? Harry and Hermione stopped where they were, listening attentively. Hoo hoo plop plop. It seemed to be the wind at first point, then came the sound of a heartbeat point, then there was a gentle rustle and a tinkling sound. Chapter 52. Lively secret room. Could it be a ghost? I didn't know it sounded like the flapping of wings. There's a light ahead, and I see something moving. The three little guys discussed quietly and slowly came to the end of the corridor. In front of him was a brightly lit room with a high, vaulted ceiling point. Countless little birds, as dazzling as gems, flapped their wings listlessly and flew around the room point. There is a heavy wooden door on the opposite side of the room. Do you think they'll attack us if we cross the room? Ron asked. It's possible, Harry guessed. They don't look vicious, but if they all rush at me, I'm afraid. Why did Professor Quirrell arrange this place so carefully? Principal Dumbledore also stipulates that students cannot come to the 4th floor. You think, could there be treasure hidden here? Who knows, maybe there's a monster locked up. The three little guys stood there, a little embarrassed. They did not enter the room without permission. Alexis has passed all the levels and reached the end. This strange secret room seems to be outside Hogwarts, and the magic that prohibits disembodiment throughout Hogwarts has failed here. With disapparition, Alexis' speed has increased by at least 5 times. He was standing in front of a familiar mirror. It was a very imposing mirror, reaching as high as the ceiling, in an ornate gold frame, and supported by 2 claw-shaped feet. Point on the top is engraved a line. Iris et streroi tuber Freuten wo see. This mirror is the famous Mirror of Erised. Legend has it that the Mirror of Erised can allow people to see their most urgent and intense desires deep in their hearts. Alexis had seen it with Dumbledore when she was a child. Sometimes there is a noisy sports ground, and a person of similar stature is running wildly. The sports ground is like a pot of boiling water, and the audience cheers his name. Sometimes there were 2 people inside, whose faces were blurry, and they stretched out their hands towards him. Alexis only felt that the 2 people were familiar and friendly, but he didn't recognize the figures in the mirror. Sometimes it was the island of Nurmengard. The wind was beautiful and the sun was shining. The wheat waves were rising, and a handsome white-haired young man was sitting on a deck chair, looking at him. Sometimes there is ruins inside, and it looks like a battlefield. More often, It was inside the forbidden forest of Hogwarts, and 5 familiar figures sneakily ran out of it. The wood shook behind them, as if something was chasing them. There are also times when it is empty and void. Alexis stood in front of the mirror for a long time, and finally couldn't help but poke her head in, looking over again curiously. What you see is a cloud and mist, and the gauze-like smoke slowly floats by, and the picture gradually becomes clearer. Against the background of the bright moon, the main building of Hogwarts appeared. In the distance, 5 small figures ran out of the forbidden forest. Behind them, a giant monster several hundred meters high was chasing after them. Boom boom boom, the giant monster was so huge that it shook the entire ground. Behind the giant monster, several black ghost figures floated out, past the giant monster, and approached the 5 people in front. Shut up, guard. A deer, a stag, a wolf and a dog emerged from the wand, and stood in front of the 5 people, blocking out the ghosts. Alexis, you bastard, use the god guard. A man who looked somewhat similar to Harry turned his head, and yelled at Alexis. I can't. Alexis's face turned red from suppressing it, and he kept swinging his wand. A string of sparks appeared on it, but no summoning guard appeared. Hurry up, Alexis. We can't hold on anymore. Sirius Black shouted through gritted teeth. Right away. It'll be ready soon. Alexis was extremely anxious, but the god calling guard just couldn't be used. Alexis. The girl's voice said, take care of Harry, man. We don't blame you. No. It'll be fine soon. Wait for me. No. Wait for me. Don't. The ghost shadow broke through the god calling guards, and the first ones to bear the brunt were the owners of the 2 deer. They were entangled by the ghost shadow, and their bodies were ignited with blazing fire. The fire quickly engulfed both of them. Then came the wolves and dogs. They were also entangled by the ghosts, carried into the air, dragged into the boundless night, and disappeared. James, Lily, Lupin, Blake. Little Alexis yelled, where are you going? Wait for me. Wait for me. The gauze-like smoke shrouded again, the white mist dissipated, and Alexis stood on the windy and rainy island. There was lightning flashing across the horizon in the distance, briefly lighting up the night sky. Under the lightning, there was a collapsed stone castle. The wild sea breeze kept blowing the wheat fields, and pieces of charred wheat fell down. The entire island was rugged, as if it had just experienced a war. In the center of the island, there is a huge pit, half of which is filled with rainwater. 2 wretched old men were soaking in the muddy water, floating quietly. Heavy raindrops fell, moistening their clothes. One of them was wearing loose white training uniforms, and the other was wearing a strange-looking robe. They were holding wands in one hand, and the wands had been broken, revealing the pale stubble. Old man. Grindelwald. Dumbledore. Get up. Alexis was lying next to the pit, shouting into the pit. The 2 old men stared wide-eyed at the stormy night sky, motionless. The water surface surged, and a familiar figure emerged. That's Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall was wearing glasses, and floating on the water, staring at the night sky with her eyes wide open. Then, there are Arthur, Longbottom, Flitwick. Familiar friends that Alexis knew emerged from the water one after another, crowding the puddle. A black shadow fell from the sky. Harry, Hermione, Ron. One by one, thin figures fell from the sky. Some of them fell into the mud, some fell into puddles, and some landed on the ruins of the old castle. The rain in the sky turned into a human being at some point. Smoke rises again, blocking sight. Alexis woke up, and his cheek touched a touch of coldness. Damn bastard magic mirror. Alexis cursed in a low voice, and reached into the mirror of her eyes. The surface of the mirror rippled like water, and his hand passed through it easily. Withdrawing his palm, an ordinary stone lay in his palm. He put the stone into his pocket, and took out a beautiful package. He opened the wrapping paper, to reveal the chocolate ball inside. The chocolate ball looked exactly like the stone. Alexis waved her wand. A slight snapping sound filled the air. Apparat disappeared in place. Chapter 53, Harry's cranky thoughts. What should we do? In the Diamond Bird's room, Harry and the 3 of them had no idea what to do. Moving forward, they didn't know how to get through the room, and retreating, the 3-headed giant dog was probably waiting for them at the entrance of the cave. The dilemma is their current state. Just as the three of them were anxious, there was a snapping sound in the air, and Alexis suddenly appeared in front of them. Alexis was stunned when she saw the three of them. "Why are you here?" The four people spoke in unison. Looking at the three confused little guys, Alexis shook his head slightly. "This is not the place you should come to. Come on, I will take you out. It seems unusual for you to be up here most of the night." Harry and the three of them cursed. He was pulled back by Alexis, bringing the three of them to the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. Alexis glanced at the invisibility cloak in Harry's hand and curled her lips happily. "Go back to bed quickly. We have classes tomorrow." Alexis pushed Harry, turned and walked downstairs. During the years when he and James were hanging out, James brought him here, and once he even got the password to enter the common room from Lupin. Unfortunately, he never used that password once. After he got it the day after the password change, Gryffindor's password was changed. Therefore, Alexis has never entered the Gryffindor common room. How did Mr. Alexis know the entrance to the Gryffindor common room? Ron stared at Alexis back with some confusion. Mr. Alexis was once a student at Hogwarts. Although he was a Hufflepuff, he was friends with the Gryffindors. It is not surprising to know that he is here. Go back to sleep. I don't want to continue sleepwalking with you," Hermione said, standing at the door. Pignose. After verifying the password, the three people filed in. The circular common room seemed a bit empty because there were only 3 people there. In order to avoid waking up other students, the three of them tiptoed to the student dormitory. After entering the lounge, "Good night." "Good night." After saying good night to each other, Hermione walked into the dormitory alone, while Ron and Harry quietly returned to the boys' dormitory. Lying on the bed, Harry tossed and turned, still unable to fall asleep. He thought of tonight's experience, of the sudden encounter with Alexis in the Chamber of Secrets, and of what Hermione had said at the door, that Alexis had once been friends with Gryffindor. "Ron." Harry rolled over and whispered. "What happened?" Ron asked drowsily. The experience tonight was exciting enough, and Ron was exhausted. As soon as he touched the pillow, he was about to fall asleep. "Why do you think Mr. Alexis appeared there?" Harry asked his doubts. "Is it a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe Mr. Alexis wants to go there himself." Ron replied vaguely. "Go to sleep, Harry. I'm going to be sleepy." After a moment of silence, Harry's voice sounded in the room again. "Ron." This time, Ron didn't make a sound, and his answer was a slight purr. "Do you think Mr. Alexis is the person we are looking for?" Harry didn't care whether Ron was asleep or not. He had too many questions accumulated in his heart, but no one was willing to answer them for him, which frustrated him. It was not long after Mr. Alexis came in during the welcome dinner that my scar started to hurt. Harry turned sideways and reached out to touch the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. Slowly recalling the scene of the welcome dinner, it does seem that Alexis' scar started acting up shortly after he walked in the door. Could it be Mr. Alexis? Harry thought about the several contacts he had with Alexis, remembering that Alexis accompanied him shopping, took them to eat desserts, and even knew that they violated school rules without making any noise. He shook his head and shook the thought out of his head. Mr. Alexis is such a good person, how could he harm him? Sure enough, I have experienced too much today, and my mind has become dizzy. Alexis didn't know that little Harry, whom he was thinking about, had inexplicably turned his suspicions on him. After leaving the Gryffindor common room, he quickly came to the principal's office and knocked on the door. "Dumbledore," Alexis said quickly, as soon as he entered the door through the password of the stone statue. "Maybe you should follow me to the 4th floor and see." "What are you doing?" Halfway through, Alexis stopped. He looked behind the desk curiously and caught a glimpse of the corner that Dumbledore had stuffed into the drawer. The robe he bought. "It's so late at night. Why is this old man playing dress up in the office?" "He is indeed a eccentric old man." Alexis cursed inwardly. Continued. "The things you hid on the 4th floor may have been stolen." "You knew I hid something on the 4th floor, Alex?" Dumbledore calmly raised his head and looked at Alexis. Fortunately, Alex probably didn't see it, right? Although the child often made himself angry, such as using a forged letter to take Harry out of Hogwarts tonight, he still took great care in the clothes he customized for himself. "That's nice. What's weird about this?" Alexis said strangely. There is nothing dangerous on the 4th floor, but you suddenly ordered not to let students approach the 4th floor, and even let Lu Wei to look at the door. I'm afraid there is something hidden there. It must be something shameful. Let me guess, Alexis pretended to think. Did you ask me to get it back from the Gringotts warehouse? You just said there was a break-in? What happened? Dumbledore stopped him from continuing and asked instead. Oh, when I passed by the 4th floor, I saw that Lu Wei seemed hungry, so I gave him some dried meat. Lu Wei said that it seemed that someone had deceived him and got in. To add credibility, Alexis pulled out a music box and dropped it on the table. I found this next to Lowy. Dumbledore opened the music box and wound the clockwork. Ding ding ding, the melodious music played, and the two little people came out and hugged each other, dancing gracefully. They danced at least 4 times today, but they were really tired. Listening to the music, Dumbledore looked a little solemn. After buckling the music box, Dumbledore stood up and walked outside. Let's go and see. Chapter 54, Quirrell. I couldn't sleep at night, so I went out for a walk. Get out of here immediately. Quirrell has passed 5 levels, and after 1 more level, he comes to the mirror averized. At this time, the ridiculous scarf on his head was being held in his hand. Behind his bald head, there was a face that looked like an abstract painter. No, maybe it was a child scribbling. It was a face that looked like a child scribbling. The back of the head. Yes, master. Quirrell had doubts in his heart, but did not dare to ask. He was afraid of his master, and he must obey his master's orders. Otherwise. Quirrell shuddered and quickly returned along the original path. Yo yo yo. Isn't this Professor Quirrell? As soon as Quirrell came out of the room, a joking voice sounded in his ears. Alexis and Dumbledore hurriedly hurried, just in time to catch up with Quirrell coming out of the secret room. Although they only saw Quirrell appearing on the 4th floor, and did not exactly see Quirrell coming out of the secret room, this was already good news for Alexis. At least it's better than missing out. Quirrell stood in the corridor, turned around stiffly. His face was dull, and his whole person was stupid. Yeah, Alec kekeke, Kesis, dun 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 dun, Dumbledore do, Headmaster, Ewan, it's yes, it's you. You guys, Alexis, wait for Principal Baddo, it turns out it's you. His stuttering seemed to be getting worse, and he himself seemed a little anxious. His mouth kept opening and closing, and the muscles in his cheeks trembled rapidly. I can't sleep. Think about it. Come out, come and walk around. You also can't sleep either? You can't sleep, and you want to go out for a walk, but you can't sleep either? Quirrell suppressed his face until it turned red, making people worried that he would faint due to lack of oxygen next moment, and finally finished a sentence. Alexis stood on the stairs, looking down at Quirrell meaningfully. Quirrell looked at him for a moment, trembled all over, and spoke a lot more fluently. Mr. Principal. Quirrell's focus is on Dumbledore. Neither he nor his master wanted to be an enemy of Dumbledore at this time and place. As for Alexis, in their opinion, well, in fact, in the eyes of many people, Alexis is Draco Malfoy from the Grindelwald family and the Dumbledore family. The only difference is that Alexis is more powerful than Draco Malfoy. Quirrell's look was too familiar to Alexis. The moment he came into contact with this look, Alexis almost exploded on the spot. You little stuttering, noseless bald guy still dares to look down on me. Dumbledore stopped Alexis, who was about to transform into a fighting cock and rush to duel with his opponent. He took a deep look at Quirrell and walked towards the secret room without saying a word. I can't sleep at night. Can I go out for a walk? In Hogwarts, this is allowed. In fact, if you have something on your mind, you can even go to the principal and open 2 bottles of sour soda and just a small box of his honey candies. The weird old man with a sweet tooth can do this, chatting with you all night long. But I couldn't sleep and went out for a walk, so I walked to the door of the secret room where the magic stone was hidden, and it seemed that I had either just come out of the secret room or was lingering at the door of the secret room. This was wrong. Dumbledore's steps were hurried, and he couldn't tell how old he was. He came to Lu Wei in a few steps. Just in time. I can't sleep either, so I asked Alex to go out for a walk together. Since we met together, let's go see the Philosopher's Stone." After Dumbledore finished speaking, he reached out and knocked on the door. Llewellyn was sleeping, his big ears flickering, his three heads overlapped, leaning against the door. Button, button, button. Although Dumbledore knocked very softly, it was only to humans. To Llewellyn, the sound was like setting off firecrackers in his ears. Llewellyn was so excited that he jumped up from the floor. Woo woof 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 woof. Okay, Llewellyn, it's me. Dumbledore took action in time and finally stopped Llewellyn from disturbing the public with his crazy shouting. Llewellyn closed his mouth and hummed his head back and forth in Dumbledore's arms in grievance. "Alright Llewellyn, we need to go in and see the magic stone," Dumbledore asked casually as he passed the door. "By the way, Llewellyn, who has been here tonight?" As soon as these words were spoken, Quirrell and Alexis, who were following Dumbledore, both stopped. The two people seemed to be aware of it and looked at each other quickly. After their eyes met briefly in the air, they turned away and continued to follow, as if nothing had happened. "He did come, go," Alexis and Quirrell thought in their hearts. "I just don't know if he took away the fake magic stone. I hope not. Only when he almost got it this time and was interrupted by himself did he become more eager to get the magic stone." In fact, Alexis knew in his heart that for this time, the possibility of catching Quirrell was very slim. The main effect he wanted to achieve was to alert the enemy, let Quirrell enter Dumbledore's sight, and give Quirrell a sense of urgency. In this way, in order to get the Sorcerer's Stone as soon as possible and get rid of Dumbledore, Quirrell will frequently take action in a short period of time and will not do it again. Plan carefully before taking action. Actions carried out in a short period of time, with high frequency, and without comprehensive planning, can easily reveal their flaws, and it is only a matter of time before they are caught. Alexis learned this trick from an old hunter when he was in the Far East. The old hunter told him that if the prey is very cunning and has no chance to attack, sometimes it is necessary to scare the snake away, consume the prey's energy, and let the prey reveal its flaws. After saying that, the old hunter stood calmly on the stone, took aim with his gun, and shot down the exhausted prey that ran away. Alexis believed that Quirrell and his shameless master were such prey point, and he was the old hunter who was calm and composed, and even had a slight smell of mutton on his body. Alexis was calm and collected, but Quirrell felt a little uneasy. In the brief moment, when they looked at each other for less than a second, he was shocked to find that Alexis was actually the same person as him. He also came to the secret room. What does he come to do? Are you also here for the magic stone? Why didn't I meet him? Did he see me? Could it be that the Philosopher's Stone has been taken away by him? Countless questions came to Quirrell's mind, and he could only pretend to be calm and remain calm. It's just that sweat has begun to flow under his scarf. A towering stench emanated from Quirrell's body. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. After FX of the Mirror Averized, Alexis covered his nose and took 2 quick steps. He was very suspicious that the stench was actually Quirrell's newly invented magic spell, which was specially used to drive away enemies and eventually stink them to death. The three of them quickly passed the checkpoint and came to the Mirror Averized. Quirrell looked at the Mirror Averized with brief obsession and greed in his eyes. This made Alexis curious. What did he see in the mirror? With his back on his back, Dumbledore took out the Sorcerer's Stone from the Mirror Averized. As soon as he got the Philosopher's Stone, Dumbledore's face turned ugly. This magic stone is actually the only one known to exist, and it was also made by him personally with Nicola Flamel. He could tell the authenticity of the Philosopher's Stone at a glance. Although the one in his hand looked extremely realistic, Dumbledore was very convinced that it was fake. Just as Dumbledore was about to announce that the Philosopher's Stone had been stolen, his movements paused again. Dumbledore fumbled, turned the Sorcerer's Stone over, and brought it close to his eyes to inspect. Felix's dessert shop, Hogsmeade. There is a special mark on the magic stone. Dumbledore recognized the logo. It was the logo of Alexis' dessert shop. Every dessert produced by Felix Dessert Shop would be carefully engraved with the address of the branch, where it came from. This magical stone that looks very realistic is a dessert from the Hogsmeade branch of Felix's Dessert Shop. Dumbledore turned to look at Alexis. Alexis smiled triumphantly. He glared at Alexis fiercely and put his hand back on the mirror of Erised as usual. The Philosopher's Stone is fine. Let's go. Dumbledore looked at Alexis thoughtfully and turned to leave. Behind him, Quirrell secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the Philosopher's Stone is still there, and he didn't get it either. Alexis smiled happily. The three of them returned to the corridor on the 4th floor. After Dumbledore gave a few concerned instructions, he walked towards the office. Alex, come with me. Dumbledore stopped Alexis, who was about to leave. I have some insomnia, please chat with me. Alexis responded with a smile on her face, waved her hand at Quirrell, and followed Dumbledore. Principal's office. Closing the door, the smile on Dumbledore's face disappeared without a trace. Where's the Philosopher's Stone? Alexis sat down on her own and proudly took out the small cloth bag from her arms. Here it is. I have long said that there is something wrong with Quirrell. You still don't believe it. How about you believe it now? Alexis looked proud, and after telling her plan again, she had a come and praise me expression on her face, which gave Dumbledore a headache. Alex, this is very important. Dumbledore knocked on the table. Do you know that if Snape or Professor McGonagall discover the signature on the Philosopher's Stone, when they examine it, they will turn on you? You are fooling around. Alexis' smile froze on his face. He didn't expect Dumbledore's reaction. Old man, you hid the Philosopher's Stone without telling me. All the teachers at Hogwarts know about it. It's okay if I don't know. Now I'm helping you. I have helped you find the suspect. All you have to do is wait quietly for him to take the bait. This not only protects the safety of the magic stone, but also helps you solve a big trouble. If you don't thank me, forget it. What do you mean? Do you think your messy levels are safe? I only need 10 minutes. 10 minutes to stand in front of the broken mirror from the corridor on the 4th floor and take away the magic stone. Did you discover the whole process of the package swap? No, right? This shows that your protection measures are not effective at all. You don't have enough protective measures, and you blame me. Alexis muttered, feeling very aggrieved. Dumbledore was carrying out secret operations without telling him. Everyone in the school knew about it, but he didn't, which made him feel like a fool. Forget it. He used his own ability to discover the loopholes in the protection measures and provided them with a remedial plan. Not only did he not praise himself, he also looked like you are messing around. What does this mean? If you do this, it will easily disrupt my deployment. If others discover this thing, all eyes will be focused on you, and all suspicion will be directed at you. Dumbledore was still trying to reason with Alexis, but unfortunately Alexis was no longer willing to listen. I know. I'll give it back to you. Alexis slammed the real magic stone on the table. I'm so sentimental and nosy. I deserve it. If I care about your affairs from now on, I will be a dog. Alexis sat in her chair sulking. Dumbledore picked up the Sorcerer's Stone that bounced on the ground, looked at Alexis with an angry look on his face, and sighed. What did you see in the mirror of Erised again? He softened his tone, preparing to change the topic and lighten the atmosphere. The mirror of Erised can reflect what a person desires most deep in his heart. This is a truth that has been verified countless times. But this truth didn't apply to Alexis. What Alexis saw in the mirror of Erised was not what his heart longed for. This mirror reflected all the desires, fears and other messy emotions in Alexis's heart. This moment made both Alexis and Dumbledore very confused. Looking into the mirror of Erised gradually changed from curiosity and fun to fear and confusion for Alexis. Upon hearing Dumbledore's question, Alexis stiffened. He put down his arms, stood up from the chair, and walked toward the door in a panic. Nothing, he said. I didn't see anything. The magic stone is returned to you. You can keep it for yourself. I'm leaving. Dumbledore stood there, looking at the back of Alexis, who had fled, looking a little worried. The last time Alexis didn't want to tell himself about the reflection in the mirror of Erised. What he saw was the death of Grindelwald. That time he was just a little silent, but after repeated questioning, he still spoke out. Now that he is running away like this, what exactly is he seeing? In fact, Dumbledore and Grindelwald had a discussion about the reflection Alexis saw in the mirror of her eyes. They put forward various hypotheses and possibilities, but none of them were consistent with the actual situation. Their discussion had no results, but in fact the two of them knew each other well, and there was another possibility. The mirror of Verized claims to allow people to see their most urgent and strongest desires deep in their hearts. If there is no problem with this rule, if the mirror of Verized is not broken. Chapter 56. Do you really not care? Regarding the mirror of Verized, Alexis himself had some speculations in his mind. Why is it that he is the only one who takes photos of a bunch of weird things? Why is it that everyone else has their deepest desires? Are you so special? After denying various speculations one after another, Alexis also thought of something. What if that was his deepest, most intense desire? What if there is nothing wrong with the mirror of Verized? The mere thought of this speculation startled Alexis herself. He no longer dared to continue thinking along this line of thinking. From then on, looking into the mirror of Verized became something he feared. It's not so much that he's afraid of the mirror of Verized, but it's more that he's afraid that he'll look like that if he looks at it too much. Today, Dumbledore brought up old things again, which made Alexis panic. He was more afraid that Dumbledore would know this secret than the Philosopher's Stone being stolen. Although he is a strange old man who has a sweet taste, has a weird aesthetic, doesn't sleep at night, is serious and old-fashioned, likes to criticize people, and is also very disappointing. The next day, Wednesday, Alexis walked into the classroom with her textbook under her arm as usual. This morning he will give a big lesson to the 2nd grade wizards, and there will be a small lesson in 3 hours. Half a night of tossing did not make Alexis tired. He was still in high spirits. The contents of Alexis's class and the ideas he advocated have already spread throughout Hogwarts through the 3rd year and 1st year wizards. Seeing Alexis himself, the little wizards immediately stopped whispering and looked at him curiously. After the same simple self-introduction, Alexis started class. Everyone should have heard about the origins and thoughts of the pharmacy course. Now I will briefly introduce it. With the experience of the 3rd grade and the 1st grade, it turned out that Alexis did not want to waste time on the subject background. After a quick introduction, Alexis began to get into the topic. Your main task this semester is to study the herbs listed in the textbook, master their medicinal properties, and correlate them with the medicinal properties of potions. Alexis stood on the podium, talking non-stop, with beaming eyes and high spirits. The little wizards below were sitting in rows, and no troublemakers appeared, and no nasty little snakes interrupted the class. Soon, 2 hours passed. After seeing off the 2nd grade wizard, Alexis stood on the podium for a while, his energetic expression replaced by confusion. He looked at the empty classroom, not knowing what he was thinking. After returning to the office with the textbooks under his arm, Horn was sleeping. Hearing the sound of the door opening, he opened his eyes, fluttered to the wooden box, spread his wings, hugged the wooden box into his arms, and looked at the door warily. Seeing that it was Alexis, Horn did not relax. He still hugged the wooden box, and cooed at him twice. I know, I'll do it for you on the weekend. Alexis waved her hand and said listlessly. Horn tilted his head, and followed Alexis to the chair with his eyes. It didn't quite understand why this two-legged creature was so weak. But it's none of his business. As long as his dried meat comes back, everything will be fine. Thinking this, Horn cooed twice more, and continued to sleep. Alexis rested on the chair for a while, patted her cheeks, took out her textbook, and returned to the classroom. At this time, all 21 students in the classroom were full. They were sitting upright, with books on their desks, and they were studying quietly. Different from the previous classroom discipline does not require anyone to maintain it at all. Alexis stood at the door for a while, and then walked into the classroom. Without him having to say anything, the little wizard saw the teacher coming in, put away their books, took out their potion textbooks and spread them out. During the whole process, except for the rustling of books, no one spoke. Alexis wasn't surprised. Because the number of students in the 6th and 7th grades was small, he combined the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade students into one class. In other words, the 21 people working on this include everyone from the 5th, 6th and 7th grades of Hogwarts and the Four Houses. 5th grade students at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry can not only run for prefects, but also face the OWL exam. The ordinary wizarding level, often referred to as the OWL exam, is a subject-based exam that 5th year students must take. OWL is administered by the Wizarding Examinations Authority. The score a student achieves in a particular OWL exam subject will determine whether he or she can continue on that course the following year. Only after passing the OWL exam and obtaining at least good grades in each subject will students take the NEWT exam in 7th grade. The NEWT exam will completely determine their future. For example, applying to the Ministry of Magic as an aura requires excellent or good scores in at least 5 NEWT exams. It can be said that the OWL exam is an exam to test whether they have graduation qualifications, while the NEWT exam determines their future career and life. Do well in the exam, join the Ministry of Magic, become an aura, win pure blood, become a minister, and reach the pinnacle of life. Didn't do well in the exam. A certain guy who refused to cheat, and even Alexis stuck the answer in his face, and he still refused to plagiarize, is currently on vacation in Azkaban. Alexis could understand the nervousness of the 5th graders. They are preparing for OWL and fighting for their future. This battle has started from the first day of the 5th grade semester. He remembered that in his generation, many students were so nervous that they vomited after just a few classes at the beginning of the semester. The intense nervousness and fear of the unknown future caused physical discomfort, which made many students suffer from physical discomfort, unable to finish a class. This is just the beginning. In the midterm, they may even need to take medication to calm down. Madame Pomfrey's place will be overcrowded by then. In the later stages, this situation will slow down, and students who feel they have no hope of passing will choose to drop out of school and even occasionally commit suicide. Alexis didn't quite understand why they were so nervous. Alexis also took and passed the ordinary wizarding level exam. All his grades were O, outstanding, excellent. This has shocked many teachers. Considering Alexis's always tepid results, this is almost impossible. Only James and others knew that Alexis had broken the anti-cheating magic of the Wizarding Examination Administration. Not only was he excellent in all subjects, but James and others were also excellent in all subjects. Only James and Lupin knew about this matter. Oh, Alexis seemed to let something slip the other day and now everyone knows. Alexis looked at the young wizards who were tired and still trying to listen attentively and felt slightly absent-minded. Chapter 57. Let's talk about exams. You seem anxious. Alexis spoke suddenly in the middle of the lesson. The little wizards had different expressions, but no one spoke. What can we do about anxiety? This is a rule in the wizarding world. Not to mention the wizarding world. Isn't it the same in the muggle world? For thousands of years, countless seniors have been worried like this. Alexis looked at the young faces below, and obvious anxiety and numbness could be seen on their faces. Anxious about the ordinary wizard level exam at the end of the semester, and numb because there is no way to change the status quo. Some of you here have passed the ordinary wizard level exam and are about to face the ultimate wizard exam, but most of them are about to face the ordinary wizard level exam. Why don't we talk about the exam? Little wizards, you looked at me, and I looked at you, but you still didn't speak. They don't understand. What's the point of talking about OWL and NEWT? If you have this time, you might as well review it for them. How many of you will be facing OWL at the end of the semester? After a moment of silence, the 5th grade students raised their hands one after another. How many have passed OWL and confirmed to participate in NEWT? There are 8 6th and 7th grade students in the pharmacy class. All 8 students raised their hands. Not bad. Alexis praised and asked, what courses have you passed? OWL is not a simple final or graduation exam. The little wizards will be assessed on basically all the subjects they have studied, and then select the subjects with excellent results and enough for further study to prepare for the advanced assessment, NEWT. In other words, OWL is more like screening out suitable directions for young wizards, and then studying for 2 years, and passing the NEWT assessment in 7th grade. After passing, the young wizards can obtain certificates in the corresponding subject areas and work in the future. This certificate can provide them with a higher starting point. In other words, OWL is only the foundation, and the NEWT certificate is full of gold. Owl is similar to a graduation assessment, while Newt is more like a professional qualification certificate. Currently, most of the wizards employed by the Ministry of Magic in the wizarding world have obtained Newt certificates in related professional fields. This kind of exam, that is of a professional nature and related to the future life, is moved to school and placed in the second year after the final exam. Those who take the exam are still a group of ignorant young people who have just grown up. To be honest, they are a little overwhelmed. In ignorance, their future has basically been determined. Even in the Muggle world, if you need to take a professional qualification certificate examination, it will cost you at least 20, while for wizards, you only need to take it. Of course, there are also those who have not passed OWL, but still choose to study, based on their passion. But what's the use? Like Alexis himself, and a very small number of people from well-off families or well-connected people, of course they can live a good life without participating in Newt, and they can even continue to study in the direction they like. But this is a minority after all. Most of them determine their future career direction when they are ignorant. If they study well in herbal medicine, they will grow herbal medicine in the future. If they study well in potions, they will become a pharmaceutical merchant in the future. If they do well in defense against the dark arts, the future. As for wanting to enter St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and injuries, or the Aura Command, or enter Hogwarts to teach like Alexis, don't be naive, that's an opportunity only a handful of people get. Point not to mention entering the Wizengamot or the International Wizarding Tribunal, that's even rarer. Doctors, pharmacists, teachers, police officers, and lawyers are not only star professions in the Muggle world, but are also in demand in the wizarding world. Of course, Alexis couldn't tell these things to the students. Although he was straightforward and did everything according to his heart, he was not a fool. The last person who openly defied the rules of the wizarding world and prepared to bring reforms to the wizarding world is now making waves on the island. The last one was spent on poor Quirrell, living the addiction of a defense against the dark arts teacher. Owl is actually not as scary as you think. Alexis counted them on her fingers. I remember the Owl exam I took. The written exam on charms was about the levitation charm, the transformation charm, and the animagus transfiguration spell. Animagus. The little wizards couldn't help but exclaim, especially the 8 students who passed the exam, who had the loudest voices. As candidates who have experienced OWL, they know best which questions are the most difficult in the charms exam. Yes, animagus. Alexis nodded in confirmation. Animagus refers to a wizard who can transform into some kind of animal while retaining his own magical power. This is different from the transformation spell. Animagus can transform into animals, but they cannot change at will. They can only be fixed on one animal appearance. The number of animagus is very small. As far as Alexis knows, the only animagus he knows are Black and Mag. Oh, and there's Peter the Grey Mouse. Since animagus is almost indistinguishable from animals, when it turns into an animal, this characteristic can easily be used to do bad things without being discovered. The Ministry of Magic requires all animagus to be registered. Of course, the animagus transformation process is rigorous and cumbersome. As for the transformation spell, that's another topic. The practical tests are about the floating charm, the transformation charm, and the growth charm. This time there were no gasps. These 3 spells are very common spells, not special spells. The written test and practical test of the defense against the dark arts course are respectively the 5 characteristics of werewolves, cracking of curses, and expulsion of boggarts. The test of astronomy is to identify all the moons of Jupiter and identify the stars and planets on a blank star map. The potions test is about Polyjuice potion. The ancient rune test is the rune translation. Alexis counted each item on his fingers, almost all the subjects he had taken that year. From a rough listen, you may find it difficult, a lot. I feel like the transformation spell and the animagus are killing me. I feel like the Polyjuice potion is so lifeless. When I see the runes, I want to hit the wall. When I see the star map, I want to sleep. Am I right? Some little wizards nodded, and they felt the same way about what Alexis said. It sounds difficult, but in fact, all the test content is what you have learned in the past 5 years. Alexis spread his hands. I can guarantee that the test content will not involve any knowledge that you have not studied. The reason why it feels difficult is because you have studied too many courses in 5 years, and some of them have not been fully mastered. Now suddenly there is an exam, and you want to learn and master 5 years of content in just 1 year. This is obviously it's unrealistic. The little wizards did not feel comforted. On the contrary, they became even more nervous. Before, they were confused and didn't know how much knowledge they didn't know. They thought that, as long as they were willing to learn, they could finish it. Now that they heard that it turned out to be all the knowledge in the past 5 years, they subconsciously felt, it's over. Chapter 58, Bad Monday. Alexis certainly didn't say this to discourage them. My course has not been included in the NEWT exam for the time being. Most of you are here out of interest or curiosity. Maybe I want to find a break from the intense and heavy study. Whatever your purpose, you are all here. Maybe I can be of some help to you. Because what Alexis said was too ambiguous, many students subconsciously thought wrong. They were not freshmen in the first or second years. As veterans who had been at Hogwarts for at least 5 years, they had heard many rumors. For example, the famous all-rounder who passed the owl and newt with the highest scores, the pride of Hufflepuff, Mr. Alexis Felix, actually passed the exam by cheating. It is said that the Ministry of Magic is still investigating this matter to this day, but it still has not found out the reason. Alexis Felix can cheat, and the fact that he cheats successfully does not mean that others can. Otherwise, there are so many people who have taken the exam in history. Why is it that only his deeds have been circulated? Alexis Felix, even if he does not take the exam, even if he is caught cheating, he will still live a good life, doing what he should do, eating and sleeping. Because his adoptive fathers are Gellert Grindelwald and Albus Dumbledore respectively. One is the famous first-generation Dark Lord, and the other is the principal of Hogwarts. Alexis knew what was going on in these students' minds, just by looking at their expressions. He knocked on the desk, attracting the attention of the little wizards who were full of random thoughts. Actually, passing the exam is not as difficult as you think. You can go to the library to read the exam questions from previous years and conduct targeted review. Of course, it would be best if you could review all the knowledge you have learned in the past. The method I mentioned is mainly suitable for students who want to pass the exam, but have been deficient in the past. This is a way to prepare specifically for passing the exam. But I have to remind you that you need to think carefully before you are ready to do this. This involves a career issue that you will engage in for decades or even a lifetime. If you rely on this trick to get through, what should you do when you encounter the same or even more difficult problems at work in the future? Alexis dared to cheat, and even dragged James and others to cheat. Of course, this was not because of his identity, at least not entirely. Mainly because he knows a lot of things. Even without cheating, he can pass the exam and obtain the certificate smoothly. Cheating is just a teenager's impulse, wanting to leave mark on his student career, nothing more. He had not gone to school in his previous life, and the 7 years he spent at Hogwarts in this life were his first time going to school, which he cherished and missed very much. In order to make the missed time more valuable, he chose to cheat, and invited his friends to cheat together. Too bad that bastard Black is so stubborn that even Lupin doesn't dare to continue cheating. Otherwise, all 4 of them passed the exam with excellent scores in all subjects, which would be a good story. Alexis interrupted his recollection and glanced at the slightly turbulent classroom. The classroom immediately became quiet again. The method I'm talking about is very effective. He said seriously. You can check the pass rate and excellence rate of previous owl and newt. Ours was the highest. And it was much higher. Of course it was a lot higher. James and his gang had made a lot of money by selling real exam questions. The dessert shop branch in Hogsmeade was built with the galleons earned. This is my suggestion. You can consider it. After Alexis finished speaking, he saw that the little wizards had no intention of continuing to sit down. They wished they could grow wings and fly to the library immediately. Fortunately, the time was almost up, and Alexis immediately announced that get out of class was over. As for homework, of course there is none. He knows how sad these little guys are who have been tortured by Owl and Newt, so there is no need to continue torturing them. Thursday. Early in the morning, Alexis had just finished teaching the 3rd grade. On his way back to the office, He caught a glimpse of Dumbledore hurried downstairs. He stared at Dumbledore's back for a while, then snorted and walked into the office. No matter what he does, it has nothing to do with me anyway. Alexis thought so. Afternoon. First grade class. Alexis frowned as she spoke. He had already seen little Harry pass notes to Ron half a dozen times, and even Miss Hermione Granger, a good student, was involved. The three of them muttered together, looking up at Alexis from time to time, and then continued muttering. The textbook spread out on the table is still on page 3. God knows, he has already reached page number 14. Mr. Harry Potter. Alexis wrote Black Nightshade, pointed and asked, please tell me about the classification of Nightshade. Harry stood up with a confused look on his face and soon came to his senses. He lowered his head and flipped through the book quickly, trying to find the answer to the question. Unfortunately, there are so many pictures in the first volume of magic, potions, and botany that it is impossible to distinguish which one is Nightshade from the massive green pictures of plants and trees without paying attention. Alexis' eyes turned to Ron. Ron's face turned red with fright, and he quickly put the book up in front of him. Mr. Weasley. Alexis walked over to Ron and took down his book. It's useless for you to block him like this. I can still see you. Besides, you held the book upside down. Alexis knocked on the table and looked at Hermione. Solanum is a member of the plant kingdom, Angiosperm, class Diffilum, order Magnoliales, family Solanaceae, genus Solanum, species Solanum. Hermione finished stumblingly and looked at Alexis uncertainly. To be fair, Hermione has a very good memory, and Alexis was able to give a general idea, even though she didn't listen to the lesson, which is really impressive. Pity. Millenai. Alexis walked up to Hermione and said, Miss Granger, are you classifying Nightshade as Millenai? Does it look like Millen's eyes? Solanum is a woody plant. Alexis opened her book to the Nightshade page, pointed to the picture and asked, Miss Granger, look at it carefully, and tell me, what does it belong to? Solanum. Hermione whispered. I have been talking about the characteristics of Solanales in this class. Now you tell me that it is Millenales. Millenales is on pages 37 to 48. Miss Granger, it's great that you can preview the knowledge you are about to learn, but this is not a reason not to listen in class. If knowledge could be mastered through pre-study alone, the profession of teacher would not need to exist. Alexis glanced at the three people, turned and walked towards the podium. He didn't know what these three little guys were doing, but no matter what it was wrong to not listen in class. Mr. Alexis. They are Gryffindor students. The familiar voice of Draco Malfoy, the eldest son whom he had not seen for a long time, sounded timidly, making Alexis stop in her tracks. Draco, Slytherin will deduct 3 points for your talkativeness. Alexis said sternly. This should have been deducted from Gryffindor. Chapter 59. Snape's anger. He is exactly like Snape. Ron patted his chest, still feeling frightened. No wonder there are rumors that Snape and Mr. Alexis don't get along. At this time, the pharmacy class was over, and Iron Triangle was walking together listlessly, chatting in low voices. Ron. What are you talking about? Hermione scolded with a frown. Don't forget, yesterday we were sharing the dessert Mr. Alexis gave us. How could Mr. Alexis be like Snape? At least Mr. Alexis washes his hair. Hermione could accept that Alexis had become strict today, but she couldn't accept that Alexis was just like Snape. Ron smiled coquettishly, and without arguing with Hermione, he turned to look at Harry. Hermione, you said that Mr. Alexis has friends with Gryffindor students. Do you know who they are? Harry was still thinking about the question that had kept him tossing and turning that night, and he asked it immediately. Mr. Alexis' enrollment was in 1971. Maybe we can go to the library and check. Hermione shook her head and then suggested a solution. Regarding Alexis, she only glanced at it briefly. Why are you interested in Mr. Alexis' affairs? The three of them walked up the movable stairs and rushed towards the classroom where the next class would be held. I want to know whether what Alexis said is true, and what happened between him and my parents, and whether what happened a few days ago was caused by what happened between him and my parents. There was one thing Harry didn't say. He suspected that Alexis in class today was his true face, and everything before was just a disguise. Harry has lived in his aunt's house since he was a child. Although he has not suffered any abuse such as domestic violence, he has also suffered a lot, which makes him not easy to trust others. Not to mention Alexis, a guy who suddenly appeared and was very hot-tempered. Just one sentence, your parents and I are good friends, can explain why you treat yourself well. Harry didn't think so. Anyway, his parents are dead, so they can't just let the living people say whatever they want. Now that he had the opportunity to investigate the relationship between the two, Harry certainly hoped to find out as soon as possible. What if what Alexis said was true? If it is true, he really has a good relationship with his parents, and he really almost became his godfather. Does that mean that he can also expect some care from his elders? Harry shook his head and came to his senses when he saw Ron placing his palm in front of him and shaking it back and forth. Harry, don't be distracted. This is Snape's lesson. Mr. Harry, you didn't pay attention in class. As soon as Snape was mentioned, Snape's sinister voice came over. Gryffindor, 1 point will be deducted. And you, Mr. Weasley. Ron, who quietly woke Harry up, could not escape. I have paid attention to you 6 times. Mr. Weasley, what is it about Mr. Harry's face that attracts you so much? Does the potion formula grow on his face? Looking at his face, can you learn how to prepare potions? Read the book. Snape tapped his textbook, tossed his robes, and announced loudly. 1 point from Gryffindor. Miss Granger, tell me how to prepare Polyjuice potion. After deducting 2 points, Snape had no intention of giving up. He directly ordered Hermione to get up and answer the question. The point is, Polyjuice potion is not something that first grade students should learn at all. Even if Hermione is excellent at studying and likes to preview, she can't preview things that are not in the textbooks, right? Sorry, I don't know. Hermione was confused. What was Polyjuice potion? What was Polyjuice potion used for? She had never even heard of it. Very well, 1 point from Gryffindor. Snape nodded and announced loudly. Professor. Hermione was not satisfied with this punishment. In her opinion, it was unfair. I don't think it is fair. Hermione gathered her courage and said, I looked through the textbook, and there's no Polyjuice potion in it. I haven't even heard of it. It's beyond what we are taught. I doubt you're taking revenge. Snape came to Hermione, stared at Hermione with a sullen face for a while, and suddenly showed a hint of sneer. Miss Granger, you said there is no Polyjuice potion in the textbook, right? Miss Granger, if you become an Auror in the future, even if you can pass Owl and Newt, when performing a mission to capture a dark wizard, you must require the dark wizard to fully follow your defense against dark magic. Do you want to use the content taught in class to cast a spell? Do you think that all content that is not in the textbooks does not need to be mastered? Do you think that just reading the contents in the textbook is enough? Miss Granger, answer my question. Hermione was so mocked by Snape that her mind went blank, and she stood there blankly, unable to speak at all. Snape glanced at Hermione and turned away. Gryffindor, 3 points. And you, Malfoy. Upon hearing Gryffindor deducting points, snickers immediately erupted in the classroom, but unexpectedly Snape suddenly turned around and pointed his finger at Malfoy. Draco Malfoy, shut your mouth. Snape scolded harshly. The great young Malfoy immediately covered his mouth obediently. Let's continue the class and start stirring the crucible. Potions class was over, and it was already evening. The little wizards gathered together in 2s and 3s, talking and laughing as they walked towards the restaurant. The 3 of them reunited, and they were exhausted by what they had experienced today. Snape is definitely taking revenge. Ron complained with a grimace. I have been attending classes honestly, but I have to get points deducted. That's right, Polyjuice potion shouldn't be in first year classes at all. Hermione also complained. When facing Snape, her attitude was completely opposite to that when facing Alexis. I don't mean just learning what's in the textbook. I mean we shouldn't be required to learn anything beyond that right now. If that's the case, don't we need to learn all the knowledge in the world in case Snape checks it out? Hermione explained, seeming to still be upset about not being able to argue with Snape in class. It's like saying nothing every time you quarrel. After the quarrel, you go over it in your mind and practice how to refute. As a result, the next time you quarrel, you don't say a word again. Come on, we have to go to the library later. The three little guys hurriedly came to the restaurant to eat and then dived into the library. Chapter 60, Wizengamot. On Friday, after finishing the lessons for the second grade wizards, it was already evening. This was the deadline for the first grade wizards to hand in their potions homework. Alexis went out for dinner and got tipsy at a bar in Hogsmeade before returning to the office with some of Felix's new desserts. At this time, the homework for the first grade wizards was neatly stacked on the table. Alexis washed his face and was about to start grading his homework when there was a sudden knock on the office door. Dumbledore appeared at the door. Alex. Dumbledore walked into the office and sighed slightly when he smelled the smell of alcohol emanating from Alexis. "What are you here for?" Alexis' eyes rolled up, seemingly as if he were rolling his eyes, and he glanced at Dumbledore before returning his attention to the young wizard's homework. "It's late. Why don't you go get some rest?" Dumbledore walked to the table and smelled it. "The homework I just handed in." Alexis knocked on the homework on the table. "I'm a qualified teacher, and I'm not like a certain person who loses his temper in class." Alexis was talking about Snape. On Thursday, he deducted 3 points from Slytherin. As a result, Snape deducted 6 points from Gryffindor with his backhand. More importantly, these 6 points all came from Harry, Ron, and Hermione. He believed that Snape was taking revenge. That petty bastard is still as petty as ever. Dumbledore didn't know what happened. He rushed to preside over the Wizengamot meeting early on Thursday morning to discuss the case of Peter Pettigrew and Sirius Black. He was busy until a few hours ago, before returning to Hogwarts. After deliberation, the Wizengamot finally decided to convict Peter Pettigrew on multiple charges including murder, and imprison him in Azkaban. He would spend the rest of his life in Azkaban. This was originally good news, but Dumbledore was hesitant. Because, along with this good news, comes another piece of not so good news. Sirius Black's case was eventually dropped. Sirius was imprisoned in Azkaban 11 years ago, and has been innocent of any crime until now. In fact, Sirius was imprisoned directly without trial. This is a Wizengamot error and omission. Dumbledore wanted to take advantage of Peter Pettigrew's trial to raise Sirius' case again, but unfortunately, he failed. "I've been presiding over the Wizengamot for the past 2 days," Dumbledore said slowly. Alexis' ears twitched, and she looked up at Dumbledore. He immediately thought of Peter Pettigrew. Not only Peter Pettigrew, but also Sirius Black. He was very interested in the news. Peter Pettigrew was convicted of murder and sentenced to the depths of Azkaban, where he will spend the rest of his life. Dumbledore turned his head, not daring to make eye contact with Alexis. Alexis curled her lips, non-committal to the verdict. Being imprisoned deep in Azkaban was not enough punishment in Alexis' opinion, but he knew that this was the limit of what Dumbledore could do. Peter Pettigrew was not qualified to use the death penalty, unless he is someone like Grindelwald or Tom Riddle. Gone. After waiting for a while, but still not hearing Dumbledore continue, Alexis asked doubtfully, "Is this gone? Where's Sirius Black? The real murderer has been brought to justice, but what about Blake, who was wrongfully accused for 11 years? I moved for a retrial of Black's case, but it was denied," Dumbledore said with some difficulty. "What?" Alexis suspected something was wrong with her ears. "What do you mean you didn't pass? What does it mean to fail?" It was Peter Pettigrew who led Tom Riddle to kill James and Lily in Godric's Hollow. He has been arrested. This matter has nothing to do with Sirius Black. You can interrogate him. Go interrogate Peter Pettigrew. "Oh, did Peter Pettigrew lie? Did he say he was with Sirius Black?" "He lied, didn't he? Use Veritaserum." Alexis shouted emotionally. "You can use Veritaserum. That guy's lying. Sirius was wronged. That bastard was wronged." "Alex, calm down," Dumbledore said. "No, Peter Pettigrew admitted it. He admitted everything. No one lied. Then why are you still locking up Sirius Black? The guy has been in there for 11 years. He won't be able to take it." After you left Godric's Hollow, Tom re-established the fidelity charm. After Black's recommendation, James chose Peter Pettigrew to be the new secret keeper. Dumbledore said with difficulty. He knew that Godric's Hollow was a sad place for Alexis, and it was not his own sad place, but in order to prevent Alexis from doing something stupid impulsively, he had to make things clear. "What's the use of telling me this? I know all this." Alexis was in a daze now, and he said blankly, I know all this, I know this, I have known it for a long time. But that bastard Sirius was deceived by Peter Pettigrew. He is like that. Anyone who praises him will go to heaven. Peter Pettigrew fooled them. By the way, even if this is the case, it was not Sirius who betrayed James, it was Peter Pettigrew who betrayed James. Alex. Dumbledore yelled. His lips moved for a long time, but he did not continue. He vaguely understood what was going on. No one wants to admit their mistakes in public, especially mistakes that lasted 11 years. Sirius Black's case involves James and Lily, as well as Harry Potter, the prophesied son and legendary savior who killed Voldemort. Once Black's case is brought up again, it will inevitably arouse reports from various media outlets, and then become a hot topic in the wizarding world. This is equivalent to putting the mistakes made 11 years ago in front of everyone, and publicly executing them. Only if you can pass it will there be a ghost. Dumbledore knew this when he brought up the Black case again when presiding over the meeting. He just wanted to give it a try and take a chance. What's more, if Alexis knew that he didn't propose a retrial of Black's case, she would have to go to war with him directly. Calm down. Yes, I should calm down, Alexis said absent-mindedly, grabbed his windbreaker, put it on his body, and walked outside. I should go out and calm down, calm down. At this moment, all he could think about was Azkaban and Black. There is no room for anything else. He and Grindelwald lived as prisoners in Nurmengard for a long time, and he had a deep understanding of the feeling of being restricted in his freedom. That was just Nurmengard, just an island. The environment in Azkaban would only be harsher than that. He doubted whether Blake could persist, and whether Blake was still alive now. Even if he were alive, he would probably have become a walking zombie, right? Chapter 61, Dementors. Alexis knew Blake. Black comes from a pure-blood family. He also has a younger brother. According to Black, his younger brother Regulus is a more qualified son than him. The Black family is a family that prides itself on pure blood. In Alexis' opinion, that was a sick family. The Black family believed in the superiority of pure bloods and refused to intermarry with muggles, muggle-born wizards, squibs and blood traitors. Sirius Black's parents were cousins. Thank God, even if these stupid cousins got married, their offspring, Sirius Black, was still smart and did not become a fool. Sirius Black's family is very complicated. He also has a cousin named Bellatrix and a cousin named Narcissa Black. Oh, by the way, her name is now Narcissa Malfoy, also known as Draco Malfoy, Foo's mother. He also has a cousin named Andromeda. Because Andromeda married a muggle, she has always been regarded by the Black family as a family disgrace and a pure-blood traitor. However, Sirius liked this cousin very much. In Alexis' memory, Sirius's cousin, Andromeda, seemed to have a daughter, Nymphadora Tonks, who is now Nora, and in the future, this Nymphadora Tonks will become Lupin's wife. Sirius was very dissatisfied with the pure-blood supremacy of the Black family. He had rebelled since he was a child. In order to anger his parents, he used the permanent sticking spell to paste Gryffindor banners, photos of muggle girls in bikinis, photos of motorcycles, photos of himself, and pictures of friends etc. are posted on the wall. Later, Sirius came to Hogwarts to go to school and met James, moon-faced Lupin, and Alexis, the third-generation Dark Lord of the Potter family. Later, he also met Lily, who was born as a muggle. Black was very kind to Lily, which made Lupin insist that, if James hadn't acted quickly, it would have been Black who would have dated Lily. This was something Lupin had said to Alexis in private. Alexis didn't know much about this, he just felt that Black's behavior in front of Lily was not as weird as Lupin said. They spent a happy time studying at Hogwarts, and then devoted themselves to the movement against Voldemort. Then, Sirius learned that, of course, the entire Black family had joined Voldemort's camp and became Death Eaters. Alexis came to her senses, her body swaying slightly as the bus rocked. He left Hogwarts and took the wizard bus to Azkaban to visit Black. He had been restraining before because he believed that if Peter Pettigrew was captured, the day when Black would be released would not be far away. Now it seems that it is still far away. The wizard bus is not a very good means of transportation. It is slow, shakes violently, has a cramped space, and is not comfortable at all. Alexis didn't care, though. If there were no other things to discuss besides the visit, Alexis would even want to use flu powder directly. He didn't blame Dumbledore. In fact, after calming down and thinking for a while, he could figure out that it was useless. Even if Dumbledore was the chief magician of the Wizengamot, there were too many people and things involved in this matter. Although Alexis is not keen on politics, he is very familiar with the forces of all parties and their goals and methods. This was due to the fact that he had an adoptive father who was a once prominent political leader. Grindelwald has instilled these in Alexis since he was a child. He expects Alexis to become a leader or something, and teaches Alexis these things, just to prevent Alexis from suffering a disadvantage in the future, because of his ignorance. Besides, if he doesn't teach, why should he let Dumbledore, that political idiot, teach him? What can he teach? How to be a political idiot? Azkaban. Azkaban Prison, commonly known as Azkaban, is a prison located on a small island in the middle of the North Sea. Almost all wizarding criminals in Europe are imprisoned here. Azkaban Prison is hidden from the Muggle world, using a special spell to keep it from being visible to the public. There are a lot of ghosts floating outside Azkaban. These are Dementors. Dementors are an on-being, a dark creature, the ugliest thing in the world. Dementors feed on people's happiness, causing those close to them to feel depressed and hopeless. They can also suck out people's souls and turn them into a state of walking zombies, leaving only an empty shell. With the Dementors, Azkaban only needs a few guards for daily maintenance. They are not used to guard the prisoners, but to ensure that the prisoners are discovered in time after their death. The deeper you go into Azkaban, the denser the presence of Dementors becomes, and the criminal's guilt increases accordingly. This is how the wizarding courts punish criminals. There is no labor, no transformation, no electric chair, and no euthanasia. There are just Dementors floating around every day, absorbing the happiness of the prisoners at fixed times, and at certain times, keeping the prisoners calm and eventually becoming walking zombies late at night. A small boat staggered away from Azkaban and headed for the shore. The crew on the ship rubbed their hands, poured a large gulp of strong liquor down their throats, and then rubbed their cheeks vigorously. His body was still trembling uncontrollably. What the hell? The crew member cursed and urged his companions to speed up and reach the shore. Come on, man, I can't stand this place for another minute. They had just come to send a new member to join the Azkaban family. During the handover process, they only stayed for a few minutes, and the crew members were already pale, and their hearts were empty and hopeless. They knew it was under the influence of Dementors. OMG. They were at least 10 meters away from the Dementors. I really don't know how those guys in the prison, who come into close contact with Dementors every day, survive. Why aren't they all dead yet? The crew looked back and saw that Azkaban stood on the sea as always, with groups of black smoke floating back and forth in the sky, shrouding Azkaban. Those black smoke are Dementors. Come on, come on. This is a hell of a place. The crew member urged him a few more words, handed the bottle to his companion, and pushed aside his companion to steer the boat himself. Whoosh! Under the shaky steering of the crew, the boat flew away like an arrow, leaving a wave of debris on the sea. Just above their heads, a man wearing a long-sleeved windbreaker was rushing forward against the wind in the opposite direction to the crew. Azkaban, here we come. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Nurmengard. Alexis was fully prepared to enter Azkaban. After a brief examination, he was taken to a small empty room to wait. Usually this kind of waiting can start from as short as an hour to as long as half a day, or even a day or two. Of course, there are lucky guys who don't have to wait a long time because they arrived by chance. The body of the person they needed to visit had just been discovered. Theoretically, the longer you wait, the greater your chance of survival because the guards will give priority to checking the corpse disposal records, and only if they cannot find it in the corpse disposal records, they will enter the prison area to look for it. And Sirius Black was locked up in the deepest part. Calculating this, Alexis would have to wait here for at least one day. But he didn't care. Alexis looked around leisurely and chatted with the guards. He observed the surrounding environment of Azkaban, observed the frequency of Dementors' appearance, and observed the structure of the prison. He talked about Dementors, the time when guards changed defenses, where the guards graduated from, and what achievements they had. Alexis was still waiting in Azkaban. On the other side, Dumbledore, who had not caught up with Alexis, was very anxious. He probably knew where Alexis had gone, but he didn't dare to use the Ministry of Magic and his apparent connections to find it. After much thought, Dumbledore, who had just returned to Hogwarts, set out again. This time, he went to Nurmengard. The weather in Austria was not good tonight. The boat Dumbledore was on was rocking back and forth in the huge wind and waves. After nearly capsizing 8 times, he finally landed on the island without any danger. It was raining heavily around the island, and the strong wind almost blew Dumbledore into the sky. Fortunately, he was already prepared. Holding an oil lamp, he headed toward the center of the island. After a series of difficult marches, Dumbledore finally stood in front of the castle. After hesitating for a long time, Dumbledore raised his hand and was about to knock on the door when the old wooden door suddenly opened with a creak. A vigorous old man wearing a loose tang suit, holding a knight's sword in one hand and an oil lamp in the other, stood in front of Dumbledore. Dumbledore's body stiffened, and he slowly lowered his arms. His eyes were a little flustered, and he silently moved his gaze behind Grindelwald. Grindelwald's expression remained normal. He glanced at Dumbledore, who was soaked in the water, and then looked outside. He muttered, "This damn weather," then shook his head and motioned for Dumbledore to enter the room. Grindelwald turned around, walked up the stairs unhurriedly, and came to the simple and empty bedroom. He casually placed the oil lamp on the crooked wooden stool and sat on the bed. "Sit down. Please forgive me, the electricity on the island broke down a few years ago and no one has been repairing it." Grindelwald seemed to be explaining, but also seemed to be stating. "Grindelwald." Dumbledore pursed his lips and just called his name, when Grindelwald waved his hand and interrupted. "Gellert." He stared at Dumbledore for a moment, then looked beyond the window, and looked out at the dark night sky, just like in the letter. Just like before. Alex went to Azkaban. Call. As soon as Dumbledore said a word, Grindelwald stood up abruptly. His old and plain eyes suddenly became sharp. He took a deep look at Dumbledore, turned around, pulled off the quilt on the wooden bed, and lifted up the bedboard. Opening the wooden box revealed a dense row of wands. "Dumbledore. How many people? Who did it? How long has it been?" Grindelwald asked as he picked out his wand. His voice was smooth, with a unique melody that made it particularly elegant. His fingers lightly ran over the wand, as if he were choosing a tie to wear when going out, as if he was not in a hurry for Alexis. He went to Azkaban to see people." Grindelwald grabbed the wand and moved it to his waist, then turned his head to look at Dumbledore. "Looking at people? Looking at that little guy named Black?" Dumbledore nodded. Grindelwald took out the wand from his waist and put it back, covered the bed, picked up the quilt on the floor and spread it slowly. But he seemed to have other ideas. Dumbledore continued as he watched Grindelwald skillfully make the bed. He left in a very emotional state. "Because of what?" Grindelwald paused slightly, then asked nonchalantly. "Because of Sirius Black." Dumbledore briefly explained the matter, and by the time he finished speaking, Grindelwald had already brought out twice as hot tea from the cabin inside. "So, can you guess what Alex wants to do? Can you persuade him to come back?" Dumbledore asked. "It's Alexis." Holding a cup of tea, Grindelwald corrected him, then stared down at the tea leaves floating in the cup and stopped talking. Dumbledore took a sip of tea and said nothing. The room fell silent, with only the heavy rain outside and the howling wind making constant noise. He really had no choice, otherwise he wouldn't have come to Grindelwald. The bad debt between the two of them has not been settled yet, but there is really no way. A long time ago, the two reached a consensus that they would never see each other again in this life. Later, Alexis shows up. Consensus is broken. Later, the two formed a new tacit understanding, and when it came to Alexis, other things could be put aside for the time being. Now it's about Alexis. If it's not handled well, Alexis may have a complete mental explosion, lose confidence in the entire wizarding world, and force Sirius to escape from prison. When things got to that point, even if he and Grindelwald teamed up, they couldn't suppress it. He was not willing to send Alexis to Azkaban with his own hands, not to mention. Thinking of the scene in the mirror of their eyes, Dumbledore shook his head slightly. Alexis is the smartest wizard with the most potential and talent he has ever seen, and he is realizing his talent step by step. Maybe Alexis is not the strongest yet, but sooner or later, he will become the greatest wizard under their own education. He shouldn't do anything impulsive. Grindelwald spoke carefully, but the strong wind outside made his voice a little erratic. I have taught him that when encountering such a situation, he must assess the situation. He does not yet have the strength to become an enemy of the entire wizarding world, unless he delivers all the letters he stole from me. Letter? What letter? Grindelwald's eyes were a little wandering. He always lowered his head and stared at the tea leaves floating up and down in the boiling water. A letter to an old friend. Nothing. Old friend? Does Grindelwald have any old friends? Isn't he the only one of his old friends left? Who else? The woman holding the skull. Dumbledore seemed to have thought of something and didn't ask any more questions. What should we do now? Dumbledore asked. Believe him. Grindelwald finally raised his head and looked directly into Dumbledore's eyes. We believe him. He is doing nothing. He should sleep and rest. Maybe he will go back on his own on Monday. Dumbledore shook his head. He felt that Grindelwald's idea was absurd. Not only was it absurd, it was also unconstructive and accomplished nothing. This is in line with his unorganized and undisciplined character. Okay, trust him. Dumbledore said perfunctorily, stood up and prepared to leave. Where to go? Grindelwald looked up and asked in surprise. Go back. Dumbledore said as he walked out and now reached the stairs. It's very windy outside. Why don't you stay one night? No need. I have something else to do. Oh. Grindelwald retracted his gaze, put down the teacup, and mumbled while packing away the tea sets. Well, good night, Albus. Good night, Gellert. Chapter 63, Azkaban. Alexis. The next day, it was sunny and windy, and everything was fine except for the black smoke that polluted the air every 3 minutes. Alexis had fallen asleep on the table, and after a night of nagging, the guard was successfully nagged to sleep by him. The guard who ran to look up the prisoner's information opened the door and shouted to wake Alexis up. What's wrong? Found it? Alexis asked nervously as she wiped her saliva. Yes, I found it. The guard smiled. He will be here in a moment. But you have to be prepared. You know, it's not a good place to stay here. The guard pointed to his head and gave a kind reminder. Alexis nodded, thanked the guard, straightened his clothes, and sat upright. Half an hour later, there was a rustling sound at the door, and then, a sour smell came, and an unkempt, almost naked savage was brought in. The guard smiled apologetically at him, pointed to the door, indicating that he would be there at any time, and then closed the door. Alexis held her breath and cautiously approached the savage. The savage had been standing motionless at the door since he was brought into the cabin. Blake? Alexis tilted his head, looked up at the savage, and shouted cautiously. The pale face of the savage was expressionless, his eyes were numb and empty, and he stood motionless. Blake? Alexis waved her hand in front of Blake's eyes. I'm Alexis. Remember me? The one who stole your clothes. Alexis was talking about an incident when they were in school. At that time, Black had just discovered that he was an animagus and was not yet proficient in transformation. James and the others accompanied him out to practice every night. At one point, Alexis took Blake's clothes away after he transformed. For this reason, Black turned into a big dog and chased Alexis around the Forbidden Forest. If James and others hadn't stopped him, he would have almost torn his pants. The third generation of the Dark Lord, remember? This is his nickname. He was nicknamed because he was so troublemaking. Moonface, Padfoot, Prongs. Blake's eyes moved. Prongs. Blake continued to repeat in a low and hoarse voice. Yes, Prongs. Moony, Padfoot, the third Dark Lord, remember? Alexis nodded repeatedly. Prongs, dead. Blake's eyes suddenly became bloodshot and red, and he gritted his teeth and growled. He's dead. James is dead. Why didn't you come? Why didn't you come? You should be here. Why didn't you come? He was killed. Blake's face turned ferocious, and combined with his pale complexion, He looked like an evil ghost, and he roared at Alexis. Suddenly, he calmed down again, the blood in his eyes faded, and he turned into a wooden man again, motionless. Boom boom boom. Do you need help? The guard heard the commotion inside, and knocked on the door and asked. It's okay, no need. Alexis shouted, dismissed the guards, and stood silently opposite Blake. After a long time, he said softly, I'm sorry. Blake shivered all over, the hair on his face began to grow, the grey beard quickly spread to the entire face, the nose and mouth protruded, the canine teeth grew out of the lips, and the pupils began to turn yellow. Blake. Alexis let out a low cry. He is about to transform into an animagus form. Blake's animagus was not registered, and the only people who knew he was an animagus were Alexis, James, Lily, Lupin, Blake himself, and Peter Pettigrew. He's an illegal animagus. If he were allowed to transform at this time, things would become more serious once he was discovered by the guards. I caught the murderer. He was sent to Azkaban too, Alexis said quickly. After Blake's transformation, the hair on his face fell away, and the black hair turned into a grey beard again, revealing his pale face. Where? They should have been incarcerated yesterday. Alexis breathed a sigh of relief and said softly, it's Peter Pettigrew. He was sentenced to life on the AIDS board. Peter? Blake's voice was filled with clear confusion. Obviously, he didn't know that the person who betrayed James was Peter, the secret keeper he recommended. Yes, it's Peter Pettigrew. Alexis nodded. Don't worry, you'll be out soon. I do not go. After a moment of silence, Blake shook his head. Ever since he almost transformed into his animagus form, Alexis found that communicating with him gradually became smoother. Those human feelings returned to him. Why? I will not leave until I know he is dead. Alexis knew who Blake was talking about. Alexis. Blake raised his head and looked at Alexis. This made Alexis' face change slightly. Blake had never called him that politely before. Harry, James and Lily's son, is he still alive? Blake asked with trembling lips. Harry is fine. He got into Hogwarts this year. I picked it up. He was sorted into Gryffindor too. He also made 2 good friends. Alexis didn't know that Ron and Hermione were not the only friends Harry had now. He rambled on about Harry. It's the same as our time. One of them is a kid from the Arthur family, named Ron, a red-haired boy. That's fine, that's fine. Blake murmured, then whispered, it's still different. I hope it's different. Alexis choked and fell silent. As the sun gradually rose, the cabin began to become brighter, and Blake's sour smell gradually fermented and spread throughout the room. You should go. Blake said suddenly. After I kill him, I'll go see Harry. Blake said. Okay. Alexis looked Blake up and down and nodded slightly. Be careful. Come out of here and find me. Don't go to the Shrieking Shack. Snape and the others know it's not safe there. Alexis transformed into an old woman and babbled, while Blake just stood there, silent in response. He seemed to be the wooden man he was when he was first brought in. Alexis patted his shoulder lightly and stepped out. Chapter 64. Blake's Meeting Ceremony. Alexis flew slowly against the sea breeze. His flying tool is very strange. It is not the traditional broom of British wizards. Looking up from below, it looks more like a weapon. Alexis stood on the strange flying vehicle, letting the salty sea breeze blow on her face, and pursed her lips tightly. Blake was still blaming him. Blame him for quarreling with James that day. Blame him for leaving. Blame him for not arriving in time. He blames himself too. But these are not issues to consider now. How on earth are we going to get Blake out? How will Blake live after he comes out? Do you want to ask Huangweijin for help? However, the Far East is too far away from Britain. Whether the Yellow Guards can handle it or not is another matter, and Black may not agree. Alexis tapped her head, feeling a little headache. Arriving at the shore, back in London, Alexis went to the Ministry of Magic. This time, he did not meet the lion-like head of the Aura Command. It was said that there was a big case on the Aura side, and all Auras were dispatched. He didn't meet Arthur either. Arthur was away for something. Alexis walked around the Ministry of Magic, and after coming out, walked into Diagon Alley. He wrote a letter to Dumbledore, telling him that he had finished meeting Black from Azkaban, and would go back tomorrow. Tell him not to worry. After finishing writing, Alexis wandered aimlessly down the street. He didn't want to go to Hogwarts just yet. Meeting Black this time, including the news that Dumbledore brought him, touched him greatly. He seemed to feel something, but he couldn't figure it out for a while. He needed to be alone for a while, preferably to clear his head. Alexis was wandering around, sorting out some budding thoughts that were either good or bad, and so was Black in Azkaban prison point. However, he was not shopping in the street. According to the rules he pointed to, newcomers like Peter Pettigrew who were sentenced to life imprisonment would be temporarily detained in the outer area to give them a time to adapt. After a period of time, they would be transferred to the place where they should be detained. Unfortunately, Black is also imprisoned for life, although his case has not been tried and he has not been convicted, but similarly, there is no term of imprisonment, so it means forever. Blake followed the guard, walking slowly past the stinking cells. The people in the cell seem a little numb. The further inside, the less emotions humans should have. At the back, there will be a doll. Blake was a little anxious. He had to do it quickly and go out and see Harry. After all, little Harry is now 11 years old, so he should have grown up. I don't know if he looks like James or not. He should be similar. When he was a child, he looked exactly like James. With that guy Alexis taking care of him, he shouldn't be bullied. If he can't even do this, haha. As for Snape, for Illa's sake, he should take care of Harry. Black was thinking wildly as he walked, selectively forgetting how he had teased Snape and made Snape embarrassed. After staying in Azkaban for 11 years, this was the first time that he had so many thoughts, the first time that he could not stay calmly, the first time that he wanted to get out as soon as possible, and the first time that he began to yearn for freedom. Why is it so cold here? That person, please smile. Ah, little Harry. Hope rekindled in Blake's heart. He walked slowly, and soon, his eyes were attracted by a figure from behind. Pettigrew Peter. Peter Pettigrew was not doing well. Everyone knows the story of James and Lily's family. Even during the detention period before the Wizengamot trial, the prisoners who were detained together also beat him with fists and kicks after they heard that he was the one who betrayed James' family. In just half a month, Peter Pettigrew's originally plump body has turned into a football. In a few days, he will evolve again and turn into a telephone pole. After the trial, Peter Pettigrew collapsed to the ground when he heard that he had been sentenced to life imprisonment in Azkaban. Ever since he was sent here last night, Peter Pettigrew has been in a constant state of panic. At first, the inmates in his room were quite kind to him. They explained the rules here to him and taught him how to deal with the Dementors. Everyone was still very kind. By this morning, somehow they began to know that Peter Pettigrew was the one who betrayed James. The way these people looked at him changed. When Black saw him, he had just finished being sucked by the Dementors and was being surrounded by his fellow inmates in a corner, maintaining a crouching position and trembling all over. Opposite him, a prison bully dug around and took out a few yellowed papers from his pants. While reading the short story on it to his fellow inmates, he glanced sideways at Peter Pettigrew. Squat down. Who told you to listen? That's right. Who told you to listen? A tall and thin inmate was sitting cross-legged on Peter Pettigrew. He felt a shaking underneath him and almost fell to the ground. He steadied himself, slapped Peter Pettigrew on the back of the head, and yelled. Pettigrew didn't dare to make a sound, silently stabilizing his crouching position and enduring it. Blake saw everything, and he sneered, causing the slightly noisy prison area to fall into silence. Several wandering Dementors seemed to sense something, paused slightly in the air, and began to approach Blake. Shut up. Go. The guard's expression changed. He scolded in a low voice, and quickened his pace. He didn't want to get close to these monsters. Peter Pettigrew. We meet again. Black ignored the guard's words, came to Peter Pettigrew, and said with a smile. His smile was warm, with a cheerful and sunny flavor. The Dementors floated faster. Help me, Blake, help me. As if seeing a savior, Peter Pettigrew immediately turned to Black for help. Blake's smile grew brighter. He stood outside the iron fence and grabbed Peter Pettigrew's hand, like an old friend he hadn't seen for many years. I will. He nodded. I'll come back to you, Peter. At this time, the prisoners who bullied Peter, the guards guarding Blake, and the prisoners in several surrounding cells all backed away in fear, trying to stay as far away from Blake as possible. Above their heads, several Dementors floated quickly and circled around Blake. "Let me go." Peter trembled all over, suddenly collapsed to the ground, and kept retreating. Unfortunately, his arm was tightly held by Blake. "Don't go, Peter Pettigrew. I'll come back to find you. This is my meeting gift for you." Blake always maintained a sunny and cheerful smile. Greet the Dementor with a smile. Chapter 65. I thought and thought, and decided to kill you now. Between him and Peter, a Dementor floated in front of him, creating a strange gravitational pull under the empty rags. The temperature of the surrounding air dropped rapidly, and goosebumps began to appear on the skin. The joy in Blake's heart gradually dissipated due to gravity, and a cold emptiness rose from the bottom of his heart. Several Dementors wandered around Blake, then took off again and disappeared. The temperature of the air slowly rises, and people come alive again. Blake ignored the whispers around him. He always kept a smile on his face, and held Peter Pettigrew with both hands. At this time, Peter Pettigrew was completely frightened. His whole body was limp, his eyes were dull, and his fat body was bulging and trembling. If Blake hadn't grabbed his arm, he would have been spread out on the ground like a big pie. "Do you like it, traitor?" Blake leaned closer to Peter and asked softly. After saying that, he let go of Peter Pettigrew, leaving him to slump in the pile of shit, and returned to the guard with a bright smile. "I'm sorry, sir. I was so happy to see an acquaintance that I couldn't help myself." Blake apologized with a smile on his face. This time, the Dementors patrolled as usual, and nothing unusual happened to Blake. The guard shook his head and didn't think much about it. He had heard that Peter Pettigrew was the traitor who betrayed James' family, and Blake was a good friend of James, including Alexis, who came to visit Blake in prison and who had just left. They were famous. A good relationship is known to everyone. Since this is the case, it is understandable for Blake to take a swipe at the murderer when he sees him. Blake has been very honest here in the past few years, and the guards have no intention of punishing him. Besides, even if there is a punishment, how can it be punished? Traitors are despised everywhere they go. The night was dark. Azkaban is like a conservative old man, with a weird atmosphere, independent of the sea, and quite out of place, compared to the dots of lights on the distant shore. This place is eerie, with ghost-like Dementors floating in the sky around the clock. It is terrifying. As long as you get close to this place, even a muggle who cannot see Azkaban will hear the whirring and screaming coming from inside. Other Dementors floated past the window, patrolling around Azkaban as usual. A pair of orange eyes lit up, and a big black dog appeared deep in Azkaban. It twisted its skinny body, easily passed through the gap in the fence, and then ran all the way along the corridor. The black dog is skinny, and it can be seen that it has a tall frame. Unfortunately, it is malnourished, leaving only its tall frame supporting its wrinkled fur. It even lost a large piece of hair on its back for some reason, revealing bare skin. The black dog was very fast, but despite this, it didn't make any sound because of the fleshy pads under its feet. Soon, it moved to the outlying cells used to overhabilitate felons. Sniffing lightly on the ground, the black dog continued running, finally stopping at the door of Peter Pettigrew's cell. The black dog's orange eyes looked at Peter Pettigrew huddled in the corner of the cell. He had been tormented all day and had just fallen asleep. Because of the existence of Dementors in Azkaban, two things are very important. One is a little book that makes people happy, and the other is warm clothes. Because it is located at sea and is patrolled and monitored by Dementors 24 hours a day, the temperature inside the prison is actually very low. If you have either of these two things, you will do well here. Unfortunately, Peter Pettigrew had neither, but fortunately, he still has this fat body, which can be temporarily placed on the outermost edge to act as a human shield. Because of the low temperature, prisoners in the same cell here sleep crowded together to keep each other warm, like a chicken in a hen house. The black dog grabbed the fence with its front paws, stood upright, easily opened the cell door, and walked into the cell. The prison bully in the center of the crowded crowd looked up at the black dog. A flash of surprise flashed across his face, and then he closed his eyes again. "Lock the door when you leave." Prison bully whispered instructions, as if he was murmuring in a dream. The black dog said nothing, biting the waistband of Peter Pettigrew's trousers, dragging Peter Pettigrew, who was sleeping like a dead pig, out of the cell, relocked the cell door, and then dragged Peter Pettigrew back to the deepest part. The deepest parts of Azkaban are completely different from the outside. People outside can help each other. They have only one common enemy, Dementors. In order to fight the Dementors, they would rack their brains to recall jokes, and then a group of people would get together and tell the jokes over and over again. Sometimes even people in several cells crane their necks to listen to one person. For this reason, the narrator needs to keep the volume high at all times to ensure that everyone who wants to listen can hear it. They will encourage each other. If someone's negative emotions are overwhelming because the Dementors have taken too much happiness and they are unable to control themselves, they will hug him, restore his warmth, encourage him, and support him. Sometimes they would even talk about things at home and then arrange to get together after they got out of Azkaban. But in the deepest part of Azkaban, it was completely different. The deepest part contains prisoners who have been imprisoned for life. They have no hope of leaving Azkaban in this life. In addition, they are kissed by Dementors every few hours, which makes them unable to produce any positive emotions in their hearts. This place is full of violence, indifference, blood, infrastructure, curses, madness. The people here have lost their humanity in the torture day after day, and they can no longer be called human beings. Black was doing well in the depths of Azkaban. In this place where magic cannot be used, wizards can only fight hand to hand like ordinary people. Whoever has a bigger fist will do better. Black is tall and muscular. When he first came in, he can knock down a monster with just 3 or 2 punches. After becoming the prison bully in this prison area, he naturally lived in a separate cell. Black patted Peter Pettigrew's face gently. Seeing that he was sleepy and confused as to what was going on, Black smiled slightly, revealing 2 canine teeth. "Peter Pettigrew, we meet again." As he spoke, he took off Peter Pettigrew's belt, tied it to his feet, and hung Peter Pettigrew upside down. "This is Azkaban. My animagus is the last resort to escape. I didn't plan to do anything here." In Peter Pettigrew's horrified eyes, Blake picked up a piece of sheet with no visible original color and stuffed it into his mouth, blocking Peter Pettigrew's scream. "But, I thought and thought and thought, and decided to kill you now. Because, if I don't kill you, I will see James and Lily as soon as I close my eyes. They are asking me why I don't avenge them." With a flash of madness in his eyes, Blake pushed Peter Pettigrew against the fence point. He took out a piece of steel from under the bed. The edge of the steel sheet was rubbed very sharply. "That bastard Alexis once mentioned to me that there is a punishment in the Far East called Link-Eye." Hearing Blake's poor pronunciation of Lynchi, Peter Pettigrew struggled violently. "Oh, you were there that night. You should have heard of it too." Blake gestured back and forth, pressing the steel piece against Peter Pettigrew's belly, pressing a mark on the skin. Slowly, the first drop of blood seeped out and rolled to the ground. "I think it suits you very well." Chapter 66, Harry's Thoughts. Hogwarts, Headmaster's Office. Dumbledore read Alexis' letter carefully, chewing every sentence in the letter over and over, trying to figure out Alexis's mood and state when he wrote the letter. Although the letter made it clear, Dumbledore was convinced that Alexis was confused now. He didn't dare to act rashly, especially if he had learned from the past. He was sure that, if Alexis went to Grindelwald at this time, it would be the end. "Do you want to go find him?" Dumbledore didn't dare. The lessons of the past were still fresh in his mind, which made him doubt whether his education method was really correct. Regarding Alexis' education, he and Grindelwald have been fighting for more than years until now, and neither can convince the other. This directly caused 2 different concepts of himself and Grindelwald to exist in Alexis's consciousness at the same time. It makes him look at things from a very strange perspective. But is it right to let go and let Grindelwald instill those strange dark theories into him? Dumbledore didn't think that was being kind to Alexis. If he doesn't fight for the opportunity to influence Alexis's thoughts, Alexis will completely fall into Grindelwald's control, which is terrible. The last guy controlled by Grindelwald was just an Obscurus, and that Obscurus almost destroyed the entire wizarding world. He had no choice but to fight with Grindelwald. At the same time, Dumbledore also knew that Alexis was very disgusted with his preaching. He was just like a child whose adolescence has been extended indefinitely, and he was most annoyed by his parents preaching. If you appear next to him at this time, it will have the opposite effect point. But if he left things alone at this time, if someone with evil intentions approached Alexis would be easily derailed. His 20 years of hard work will be in vain, and Alexis will be destroyed. Dumbledore put down the letter, a little anxious. Finally, he called Professor McGonagall. Call Harry Potter and I'll take him out. There are some things that need to be dealt with. What's the matter? Professor McGonagall asked strangely. First year students are not allowed to leave school at will. It's a muggle thing. Dumbledore was moved in his mind and gave an explanation casually. You know, McGonagall, Harry used to live at his aunt's house. Alexis left Harry behind when he took him away. There is a little hidden danger. Harry's aunt has called the police, and I have to take Harry to explain it clearly. Professor McGonagall nodded without thinking much. After a while, Harry was brought in. Harry, Alex, your potions teacher, wants to take you out to play. Dumbledore started talking nonsense seriously. He asked me to send you there. Do you want to go? Harry's heart was racing. Are you looking for me now, outside the school? Are you trying to kill someone and silence them? Is Alexis' true nature finally exposed? Mr. Principal, are you going to? Harry asked quietly. Yes, that's right, I'll go too. Dumbledore showed a kind smile and continued to make things out of nothing. You know, Alex is my adopted son, and I haven't lived with him for a long time. Maybe this weekend is a good time. Not a bad opportunity. He's in Diagon Alley now. How about it? Do you want to go? Harry felt slightly relieved when he heard that Dumbledore was there. There is no way that Principal Dumbledore is also with Alexis, right? Although Alexis is Dumbledore's adopted son, it is probably just Alexis who deceived Mr. Dumbledore, and Mr. Dumbledore has not yet seen Alexis' true face. Harry hypnotized himself and nodded. Okay, sir, can I take my friend with me? Dumbledore thought for a moment and pointed toward the door. Of course, of course. I'll wait for you here. Go call them over. Harry bowed slightly and trotted back to the Gryffindor common room. Ron, follow me to Diagon Alley. Harry found Ron and said breathlessly, where are we going? Ron was struggling with the homework in potions class. He thought he heard wrongly and looked up uncertainly and asked, please say again, Harry, where are we going? Diagon Alley. Harry repeated, repeating Dumbledore's words succinctly. We can't go, Harry. It's too dangerous. Ron shook his head, disagreeing with Harry's decision. He wants to kill you. Harry picked up Ron, turned around and ran towards the library. He had just asked that Hermione no longer had the lounge, so there was only the library. With Principal Dumbledore here, nothing will happen, Harry said as he ran. And I have a new idea. If Alexis attacks me, we can let Dumbledore see his true face sooner. What if you don't take action? If we didn't take action, we can take this opportunity to find out what exactly they released to my parents. Maybe this can solve the mystery. They went to the library and looked through a lot of books, but didn't find much useful information, except a few old photos. So far, they only knew that Harry's father and mother were also students at Hogwarts, that Alexis was in the same class as them, and that they had a few other people with whom they had a good relationship. That's it. Ron was successfully persuaded by Harry. The two ran into the library and quickly found Hermione. Hermione was holding a copy of Magic, Potions, and Botany and frowning, thinking hard. There were a lot of books about potions and herbalism spread out on the table beside her. Harry repeated Dumbledore's words, then expressed his thoughts, and then looked at Hermione expectantly. Mr. Alexis can't be who you think he is. Hermione was a little angry, and her voice rose slightly. This allowed her to successfully gain Mrs. Pince's gaze, which frightened Hermione into covering her mouth and apologizing profusely. Okay, Hermione. Harry grabbed Ron, who was about to argue, and whispered, whether he is or not, we can go and have a look. It will just prove our point. Go and go. Hermione hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth and agreed. Then let's go quickly. Principal Dumbledore is still waiting for us in the principal's office. Chapter 67. Is it parent-child time now? London, Diagon Alley. The 4 people who came on the Flu network looked around Diagon Alley, but did not find Alexis. The 4 of them stood on the bustling street of Diagon Alley. "Mr. Principal, are you sure Mr. Alexis is here?" Hermione looked at Dumbledore suspiciously. Dumbledore had a headache. For Alexis, he prepared carefully today, specially wearing the robe Alexis gave him. On weekdays, he only wears them secretly in the office, and is reluctant to take them out. At this time, Dumbledore was wearing a light brown fedora hat with a black grosgrain wrapped around it. She was wearing a dark purple robe decorated with crescent moons and a pair of black boots on her feet, which looked weird. Dumbledore took the letter and read it carefully. The letter is signed Diagon Alley. "Maybe he can't wait for us and goes to play by himself first," Dumbledore said. "So, where is Mr. Alexis?" Dumbledore was speechless. "I see." Harry spoke suddenly. "I might know where Alexis, Mr. Alexis is. We stayed at the Byron Hotel after he took me away from my aunt's house, and Mr. Alexis said at the time that he had a long-term room at the Byron Hotel. He stayed there every time he came to London. Maybe he's at the Byron Hotel. Let's go to the Byron Hotel." Dumbledore acted vigorously and led the 3 little guys out of Diagon Alley and headed directly to the Byron Hotel. In Diagon Alley, because it belongs to the realm of wizards, Dumbledore's strange costume is not eye-catching. Even if Dumbledore is not recognized in the eyes of wizards, he is at most a wizard with strange tastes. But when Dumbledore comes to the Muggle world in this costume, it would be interesting. The 4 of them had just come out of Diagon Alley and walked a short distance away. Under the guidance of Hermione and Harry, they were standing on the bus stop, waiting to take the bus. There were many people on the platform, and everyone was quickly attracted by Dumbledore's strange clothes. People realized that it seemed ungentlemanly to look at an old man with such fashionable tastes, so they turned to look at him quietly. The atmosphere on the platform started to get weird. Harry and Hermione felt as if everyone around them was pointing fingers at them, which made their cheeks heat up, and an inexplicable sense of shame rose from the bottom of their hearts and continued to grow. Ron has lived in the wizarding world since he was a child. Even though he has a father who loves to study Muggle items, he still has little understanding of the rules of the Muggle world. At this time, he was looking around curiously, making exclamations from time to time. As for the gazes of people on the platform, he just felt a little strange. Maybe his handsome appearance shocked them. Ron thought happily. Dumbledore is well informed. He knows a lot about both the wizarding world and the Muggle world. He naturally knows what these people are looking at. But he didn't care. Who is he? Albus Dumbledore, recipient of the Order of Merlin, First Class, Chief Wizard of the Wizengamot, the Supreme Wizarding Court, President of the International Federation of Magic, the Great White Wizard who has been nominated by the Minister of Magic many times. Does he care what Muggles think of him? Apparently, Dumbledore didn't care. Note 1. I saw Dumbledore calmly flicking the non-existent dust on his robe, adjusting his clothes slightly. The bus quickly stopped at the stop, and Harry and Hermione led Dumbledore and Ron onto the bus. In the car, Ron looked at the scene outside the window and still couldn't help but marvel, which made Harry and Hermione feel a little strange. There is both the shyness of a good friend who has never seen the world, and the pride of a good friend who marvels at the Muggle world. In this strange mood, the 4 of them got off the bus in front of the Byron Hotel. "Hello." Harry volunteered and came to the front desk. "Is the guest in XXX room here?" "Sorry, Kit, this is guest privacy. I can't reveal it." The receptionist politely rejected Harry and looked at Dumbledore in strange clothes. "I'm with him," Harry continued. "If he comes, please let me know and say that Harry Potter is here waiting for him, okay?" With that said, Harry took out a card and handed it to the front desk. The receptionist took a look at the card, shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, the gentleman in XXX room is not here." Just when Harry and others were about to leave in disappointment, the front desk suddenly said again, "Perhaps you can wait here. The gentleman will be back soon." There, he's back. Harry turned around to see Alexis walking into the hall holding a stack of paper bags. "Alex. Mr. Horcruxes." Dumbledore and Hermione shouted in surprise. Alexis' sight was blocked by the paper bag in his arms, which made it difficult for him to see who was in front of him, but he could tell, just by listening to the voice. Alexis paused slightly, then continued walking forward, as if nothing had happened. Hermione stepped forward to help, but he dodged her. "Thank you, Hermione, but no, I can carry them. They are not old." Alexis smiled and thanked him, then turned her head to look at Dumbledore and glanced at the three Harrys. "So, it's family time now?" Dumbledore said nothing, which surprised Alexis. He thought that Dumbledore would come angrily, appear in front of him, and then criticize his behavior and lecture him. Seeing that Dumbledore didn't speak, Alexis raised her eyebrows and walked towards the stairs. "Let's talk in the room." Dumbledore stood there looking at Alexis's back in a daze. In his memory, Alexis perfectly inherited Grindelwald's taste. He always maintained exquisite and decent clothes, and looked high-spirited, as if he had infinite vitality. This makes everyone who sees him cannot help but be influenced by him and become full of energy. But now, Alexis was wearing a wrinkled windbreaker. The woolen windbreaker was originally well tailored, but now it was like a piece of plastic sheet wrapped awkwardly around his body. The stubble under the chin is very long, which makes Alexis look a bit sloppy. Coupled with the messy hairstyle and the tired and confused eyes, the whole person exudes an aura of decadence. Anyway, luckily I found it before I was influenced by others. Dumbledore breathed a sigh of relief and followed him upstairs. Note, when Dumbledore was young, before the incident in Godric's Hollow, he was madly infatuated with Grindelwald. The two had similar interests and worked together for the greater good. In other words, Dumbledore agreed with Grindelwald's views, at least in general, otherwise he would not have followed Grindelwald. Not to mention making a blood pact with Grindelwald. It was only after the incident in Godric's Hollow that he broke with Grindelwald. I don't think Dumbledore is a lover, only an nymphomaniac. If that were the case, Dumbledore wouldn't have achieved anything later, right? Therefore, I think that Dumbledore actually has a contempt for muggles in his heart. The difference from Grindelwald should be that he believes that muggles are weak and need the protection of wizards, rather than Grindelwald's muggles being weak. Let's enslave them. But no matter what, the two just have different attitudes towards the weak. In essence, they are both arrogant and contemptuous, of course. This is my personal opinion. Chapter 68, Repression. Back in the room, Alexis put down the paper bag, took off his windbreaker, threw it casually on the bed, and pointed to the sofa. "Sit anywhere." After speaking, he rolled up his sleeves and took out the contents of the paper bag. It was some fruit, and a big bag of cream, and various colors of food coloring. The room Alexis booked at the Byron Hotel was a suite, almost as big as a 3-bedroom apartment. Because it was a long-term reservation, there were some Alexis' personal belongings piled up in the room, and the hotel didn't care about them. At this time, the living room was littered with tools. Tables were pushed together and put together. There were several messy cream cakes on the table. Alexis held the turntable and put it on the ground. She followed him and sat in front of the turntable. He reached out and grabbed a piece of cake, cut it into squares in 2s and 3s, and placed it on the turntable. He took another handful of blueberries, crushed them and scattered them randomly on the bread. After thinking about it, he mixed a tube of cream with grey pigment and spread it on top. Alexis was concentrating on making the cake. He put all his energy on it, as if Harry and others next to him didn't exist. After writing the letter and having 2 drinks in the bar in Diagon Alley, Alexis bought tools and returned to the room to start making cakes. The messy cakes that were smashed on the table were all made by him, but he didn't seem satisfied with his work. Hermione squatted beside Alexis curiously, observing Alexis's methods, while Harry and Ron quietly wandered around the room. Dumbledore stood aside and watched for a while, then started wandering around. Alexis used the clean and tidy room for just one night, but it was in a mess. Dessert tools were scattered everywhere. Cakes, chocolates, candies, cookies, etc. were everywhere. The walls were even stained with pieces of semi-dried cream. Everything in the room made Dumbledore frown. Alexis is a regimented person. Although he doesn't have misophobia or obsessive compulsive disorder, where he lives, everything will be neatly arranged, which is definitely not like the grocery store now. Dumbledore remembered that the last time Alexis made his place look like this was 11 years ago. Alexis is a simple man, and everything around him fully reveals his inner self. He can easily whip up a sophisticated and delicious cake if he's in the mood. Look at the messy desserts in the house and the cream marks on the wall. These perfectly reflect his inner state. Dumbledore paused slightly. He bent down and lifted up the bedside and picked up a bird from under the bed. This is an ordinary sparrow with a small body and grey feathers. It is no different. However, it is dead. Dumbledore reached out and wiped some residue from the sparrow's beak, then brought it up to his nose and smelled it. Onions, daisies, the bitter one should be bezoar, a few plants from the Far East, thin dragon's blood, a lot of cream, a small amount of chocolate, white sugar. What is Alexis going to do? As far as Dumbledore knew, Alexis was very accomplished in pharmacy. He could combine various medicinal materials reasonably and cook a pot of delicious porridge, which could not only fill his stomach, but also exert its medicinal effects. It also provides delicious food. This is his unique talent. He had never failed, and the most serious one was just causing Mrs. Norris, whom Filch raised, to suffer from vomiting and diarrhea. That time, he wondered if Alexis did it on purpose. What about this time? Dumbledore reached out from under the bedside table and pulled out a dead mouse. This time, only 2 people died from what he saw. Death is not allowed in the process of experimental potions. Even Dumbledore knew that every potion had caused the death of many lives during the maturation process, and many of them were even human beings. But it is unusual for this kind of thing to happen to a pharmacist who never fails. Alex. Dumbledore hid the mouse and sparrow and returned to the living room. I haven't been to London for a long time. Can you take me for a walk? With quick movements of her hands, Alexis carved each strawberry into a bird, placed it on the cake, and said no without raising her head. Dumbledore choked, not knowing what to say. Mr. Alexis. Hermione also noticed that the atmosphere was unusual, and she asked cautiously, "Can I have a piece?" Alexis finished decorating, casually spread a handful of butter on her hand, and then smashed the delicate cake into pieces with one punch. "No, you can't eat this cake," Alexis explained as he cleaned up the mess and threw the freshly baked cake on the table aside. "Not for you." After saying that, he grabbed another piece of cake, spread it on the turntable, and started again. Hermione looked at Dumbledore and asked with her eyes, "What's wrong with Mr. Alexis?" Dumbledore responded with silence. "What's wrong? You're competing with yourself. Alex, we should talk." Seeing Alexis smashing the 6th cake with one punch, the aura around him seemed to be getting more and more manic, and Dumbledore had to speak out. Alexis made a movement with her hands, and the decoration turned into a spiral-shaped pile of excrement. Puff the 7th was scrapped. Talk about what? Dumbledore sat down next to Alexis, organizing his words. It was already noon. After asking for Dumbledore's permission, the 3 of them went out to play. Dumbledore and Alexis were the only 2 people in the room. Talk about Blake. Dumbledore reached out and grabbed Alexis's hand, which was about to spread butter on the slices of bread, and said seriously, "This is not your fault," including James Matter and Godric's Hollow. Dumbledore didn't seem to see Alexis' reaction and continued. "Actually, since that night in Godric's Hollow, I have always wanted to talk to you about what happened that night, but I never had the chance. It's you who've been avoiding it. Now we must talk about it and face it, Alex." Dumbledore said seriously, "It has become a knot in your heart, and we must untie it." "Untie what?" Alexis asked in a hoarse voice. "I had a fight with James and left Godric's Hollow in anger. James had to find other people to help him for little Harry and Lily. Blake introduced the ever-daunted Peter Pettigrew, who became the secret keeper, then leaked the location of Godric's Hollow. When I got the news, I was rushing to Godric's Hollow, but Tom Riddle had already prepared. He sent Bellatrix, Peter Pettigrew, Lucius Malfoy, and a large number of people to intercept me. When I arrived, he had already killed James and Lily. I got there late, and I only saw Snape standing in the flames holding Harry. All of Godric's Hollow was in flames." Alexis looked at Dumbledore with blank eyes. "It's over. Do you want to continue? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69. When Did She Like Me? Just as Dumbledore was about to say something, an owl suddenly burst in and dropped a letter. Alexis was unmoved. Dumbledore had to take out the dried meat and feed it to the owl. After sending it away, he picked up the letter. He only glanced at it, his face changed slightly, and he subconsciously looked at Alexis. "What happened?" Alexis asked with a wooden face. "Rufus wrote to you." Dumbledore handed the letter to Alexis. The content of the letter was very simple, saying only one thing: Christy Connor was missing. Christy Connor is a student in the same grade as Alexis, and comes from Gryffindor as an aura. Rufus knew something about the relationship between Christy and Alexis, or in other words, he had misunderstood the relationship between the two, and felt the need to inform him. "Why is Rufus telling me this?" Alexis asked in confusion as she had finished reading the letter. He knew Christy, and he was quite impressed by this girl. She always came over to ask him some simple questions. At first glance, she looked like a guy who didn't study hard and had a stupid mind. "I really don't know how she passed Newt." "Don't you know?" Dumbledore asked. "She likes you." Alexis looked at Dumbledore strangely and slowly folded the letter. "She likes me? Since when did she like me?" Then he shook his head. "We are not suitable. She's so stupid. When she was in school, she always asked me simple questions. What are the medicinal effects of aconitum? How to make polyjuice potion? What are the steps for an imagus transformation? You don't understand such a simple question as face, and you still bother me all the time. I suspect she cheated on the Newt exam. Otherwise how could she become an aura? Is this part of our conversation?" Dumbledore was speechless for a moment. Everyone in Hogwarts, including teachers and students, could see that Christy liked Alexis. She pursued Alexis throughout his student days and after graduation, until 11 years ago. Because of Alexis, Christy is not even married yet. If it weren't for Alexis, Christy wouldn't have participated in the fight against Voldemort. When she learned that Alexis was traveling around the world to escape reality, Christy did not bother him. After getting the news from Dumbledore, Christy silently returned to the Ministry of Magic and became an aura, silently waiting for Alexis. Seth, a girl who is so affectionate and dedicated, is actually a fool in Alexis's eyes. At this moment, Dumbledore had some doubts about how failed his education was. Something that is almost known to everyone in the wizarding world. But you, the client, tell me that you don't know about it at all? You really don't know? Dumbledore asked tentatively. Alexis frowned slightly. After Dumbledore said this, he remembered. There seems to be such a thing. When they were students, Blake and he had made a bet using Christy. James, Lily and others also participated. They all thought that Blake would win. What the bet was exactly, Alexis forgot. But he remembered that he lost that time. For this, he paid a heavy price by making desserts and snacks for James and others for an entire semester. Also, Alexis seemed to remember that there was a girl who was always following him, and she seemed to have saved him. Under Dumbledore's expectant eyes, Alexis shook her head. Dumbledore. Alexis looked at Dumbledore strangely. What do you want me to do? Alexis asked. Go and have a look. Dumbledore said. Go to the Ministry of Magic and find out about the situation. Aura Command hasn't given up on looking for her yet. Maybe you can help. Okay. Alexis stood up nonchalantly, grabbed the wrinkled windbreaker, put it on, and walked outside. Ministry of Magic. Rufus didn't feel anything strange about Alexis. After seeing Alexis again, Rufus took out a document and handed it to him and explained half a month ago, there were werewolves harming muggles in the northern region. We dispatched a team of auras and found a wandering werewolf tribe. In order to clean up them, we have been working hard for the past half month. Last night, there was a head-on conflict between auras and werewolves. The werewolves took a muggle hostage and fled further north. Christy chased after him and then lost contact. Rufus pulled out another portfolio. Christy said that, if one day she was confirmed dead, she was going to give it to you, Alexis. I think now is the time. Alexis? He turned to look at Dumbledore, and then at Rufus, who had a sad expression on his face. A question mark slowly appeared on his head. Werewolf, a wandering tribe. So, I don't understand, Rufus. Alexis did not reach out to take the document bag. He asked doubtfully, has Christy's death been confirmed? Also, why did she leave this to me? Not yet, Rufus said while looking at Dumbledore, who was behind Ziz. However, the aura command stipulates that during the execution of the mission, auras need to report their sightings regularly, unless there are special circumstances. She's already overdue twice. At the same time, Rufus moved his lips slightly and said to Dumbledore, "What's going on?" Dumbledore returned the smile wryly. What happened? He also wanted to know what was going on. Alexis did not see the exchange between Rufus and Dumbledore. He frowned and asked in confusion, "Since the death is not confirmed, why should it be handed over to me? Also, why me? I still don't understand. It seems that she and I only fought together more than 10 years ago." The way Rufus looked at Alexis changed now. He didn't speak again, but looked at Dumbledore with questioning eyes. Christy is his subordinate. He is smart, astute, and capable. He is much better than many male wizards. He usually keeps a clean mind. He has never heard of Christy having any affair with anyone. All he thinks about is Alexis. Now that the person is missing, do you want to just pat your butt and leave? Never heard of doing this. Although Rufus didn't know the term scumbag, the emotion he revealed in his eyes when he looked at Alexis was that of looking at a scumbag nakedly. She's not dead yet. Okay, it's time for me to go back. Alexis didn't want to waste time with them here speculating about the life and death of a person who had nothing to do with him. Moreover, in his memory, the stupid girl was very smart and skilled in using magic spells. Although she was still a bit of a charmer according to him, a mere wandering werewolf tribe would not be able to trouble her. Besides, a werewolf tribe, what's there to be nervous about? While traveling around the world, he even accidentally broke into the territory of the Chinese fire dragon. The werewolf tribe is still a wanderer, and he has several treasures from the tribe hidden in his pocket. After saying that, Alexis turned and left. "Sorry. He's been in a bad mood lately, you know, Peter Pettigrew." Dumbledore made an apologetic gesture, said something slightly, and turned to follow. Chapter 70, Week 2, /. After leaving the Ministry of Magic, Alexis returned to the Byron Hotel. After processing the materials, he notified the hotel to clean up, and then left. "Where are you going? Don't you want to go out and play?" Alexis led Dumbledore to the amusement park and pointed to the tall Ferris wheel inside. Family moment? After saying that, Alexis bought a ticket and entered the park. Seeing Dumbledore still standing outside, she waved to him in confusion. "Harry and the others are here too." Dumbledore followed reluctantly. There are not many people in the playground in winter, and there are no people in front of many facilities at all, which saves Alexis a lot of time in queuing. After playing for a while, Alexis went straight to the Ferris wheel. "Harry, do you want to come together?" Harry shook his head and acted like he was afraid of heights. Alexis turned her eyes to Hermione and Ron. Hermione was a little eager to give it a try, but before she could speak, Ron pulled her back. "Thank you, but we want to go over there and play the merry-go-round, Mr. Alexis." Hermione pointed to the merry-go-round next to her with disappointment. "Maybe we can wait for you and Mr. Principal over there." Alexis sat in the cabin and glanced at the three of them inexplicably. Without saying anything, she pulled Dumbledore in and slowly lifted into the sky as the Ferris wheel rotated. He thought there was something wrong with Harry. Hermione had been a little absent-minded all day today. Originally, Hermione was quite normal, but by the afternoon, Hermione had become abnormal. Is it not normal, and can it be contagious? Alexis shook her head, wondering what they were up to. The Ferris wheel has risen to its highest point. If you lie down on the window and look down, you will see that the people below are like ants. The cars and houses are all made of matchboxes, very small. "Do you know why I booked a room at the Byron Hotel?" Alexis suddenly asked. Dumbledore shook his head. "You young people are so good at playing, I don't know why. When I was little, I always wanted you and Grindelwald to take me to this amusement park. The Byron Hotel is the closest hotel to here. Later I knew that would probably never happen, so I just did it myself. You can see the Byron Hotel from here. Over there." Alexis pointed into the distance. "That's the Ministry of Magic. That's Diagon Alley over there. And over there is St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Maladies. And over there is a platform. Peter Pettigrew is dead. Guards discovered his body this morning. To be precise, it was no longer a corpse. Peter Pettigrew's fat body was scratched into potato shreds, carried in his prison clothes, and placed beside the skeleton. The guards identified the deceased through the name tags on their prison uniforms. This incident did not cause much disturbance in Azkaban prison. In the eyes of the prisoners, betrayers should die. In fact, even the Death Eaters imprisoned in Azkaban did not have a good impression of Peter Pettigrew. No one likes a traitor. He can betray others today, and he can betray you tomorrow. However, this matter quickly attracted attention from the outside world. At noon, the news leaked out, and people from the Wizengamot came to confirm point. Following this, reporters from the Daily Prophet, Witch Weekly, Evening Prophet, Quibbler and other media followed. The people of the Wizengamot were busy confirming their identities. Reporters were taking pictures of a pile of rotten meat, and the guards were staring at the Dementors, as though they were in danger. Only the prisoners were the most relaxed. They hugged their arms, gathered together in small groups, and watched with cold eyes, enjoying a rare leisure time. Because of the arrival of the Wizengamot and outsiders, the Dementors are not allowed to come near here for the time being, and the prisoners can temporarily not worry about their good mood being sucked away by the Dementors. Peter Pettigrew attracted so much attention, mainly because he was a Death Eater who was sentenced to life imprisonment in Azkaban prison after his identity and crimes were disclosed for the first time after a large-scale purge of Death Eaters a few years ago. What's more, he is related to the famous Godric's Hollow case. Previously, because the Wizengamot activated special conditions, the trial process of Peter Pettigrew was not made public, but the outside world has already speculated about his culpability. In fact, as early as 2 Zalkyans and Alexis captured Peter Pettigrew and gave him to Dumbledore, the matter of Pettigrew's capture was exposed by the media. The Daily Prophet also reported this. A special column was created to write about the life of Peter Pettigrew and also review the glory and decline of the Death Eaters. The Quibbler has also published relevant content, but unlike the implicit approach of the Daily Prophet, the Quibbler straightforwardly drags out the Death Eaters and rubs them all away. If it weren't for the fact that Voldemort's name couldn't be mentioned, it might also pick up a few things about Voldemort and Peter Pettigrew. 2 days ago, the Wizengamot completed the trial of Peter Pettigrew. The process and results were not disclosed to the public. Peter Pettigrew was secretly escorted to Azkaban prison. But the reporters with great savvy still found out about Peter Pettigrew's final verdict. Because there was no trial process, the news was only moderately popular. They were preparing to brew it up and stir up the heat of the Death Eaters' cold rice. As a result, their boss suddenly told them Peter Pettigrew was dead. In Azkaban prison, the death was extremely miserable, being deboned and fleshed out. The reporters were excited. They contacted the Wizengamot immediately. After seeking permission, they took the equipment and took a hitchhiker to Azkaban, taking pictures of the mess of meat on the ground. While taking pictures, they had even thought about how to tease this news carnival. First, let the news of Peter Pettigrew's death out. Let's look back at the past of the Godric's Hollow case and briefly mention the Death Eaters and the Savior. Then let the news brew for a while and take the opportunity to go to Hogwarts to interview the great Mr. Harry Potter, who I heard went to school there. Oh, and Mr. Alexis, this is the deceased's good brother and also involved in the Godric's Hollow case. It would be great to get his interview transcript. They can also reveal the love and hatred between the 7 and 8 Hogwarts 4 evils. After this set is completed, it will almost be Christmas, just in time to make a big move on Christmas. That person is coming back. This will definitely cause people to panic. By then, this news will arouse national discussion. Their newspaper sales will go through the roof. As for whether that person really came back and how he came back, that's for next year. With the news carnival on Christmas Eve, their bonus this year is guaranteed. The reporters excitedly took photos of the minced meat and looked at each other. They didn't even need to speak. A set of procedures had been communicated. They have even assigned which media should report what and which 2 media should oppose each other and cause controversy. Chapter 71. A new week starts with the newspaper. The media moved quickly. When Alexis and others returned to Hogwarts, the newspaper had already published the news that Peter Pettigrew had been quartered. This caused some waves in the wizarding world. No one suspected Alexis for the time being. Even though he was present in Azkaban on the day Peter Pettigrew was hauled off to prison. But the time is not right. Besides, if you wanted out Alexis, you can. But if you want to say it out, it depends on whether you have the strength. The whole world knows that Dumbledore and Grindelwald are so protective of this bastard boy that they provoked the two old men to give you an old version of a black and white mixed doubles, and no one in the wizarding world can catch it. However, Alexis is not the first suspect either. The Quibbler and the Evening Prophet coincidentally mention a long forgotten name, Sirius Black. While the Quibbler briefly mentioned these, the Daily Prophet reported in more detail. After all, the Quibbler is not actually good at news, or in other words, it is not good at social news. The Evening Prophet pointed out that Sirius Black seems to have been forgotten by the world, since he was imprisoned in Azkaban for no reason 11 years ago. In fact, in Azkaban, a prison with a high death rate, Sirius may have been turned into dry bones. But this time Peter Pettigrew was dismembered, which reminded people of this name again, Sirius Black. Sirius Black, like Alexis Felix, who was hired as a teacher this year, is a good friend of James Potter and Lily Potter in Pettigrew. Peter was even recommended to James by Sirius Black. Maybe Sirius Black has been living in regret for the past 11 years, until half a month ago, his good friend, Mr. Alexis, caught the traitor Peter Pettigrew and threw him into Azkaban prison. And in Azkaban prison, Sirius Black is being imprisoned. The Evening Prophet even found a suitable excuse for Alexis to visit Blake. Perhaps Mr. Alexis caught the betrayer, Peter Pettigrew, the murderer who single-handedly directed the Godric's Hollow case 11 years ago, and then he had the dignity to meet his friend. They may have even plotted something together. According to the guards of Azkaban prison, on the day of the visit, Black was in a very emotional state. The two of them stayed in the cabin for a long time, and Black finally came out laughing. We all know that in Azkaban, people will not have too many emotions after staying in Azkaban for a long time, and it is even impossible to laugh in Azkaban. It can be seen that the two of them had a very happy conversation. The Evening Prophet was very generous and gave this news an entire front page, which eloquently speculated on the entire incident. Alexis didn't feel much emotion after reading the newspaper. He was just a little worried about Blake Point. However, this concern was put to the back of his mind when he considered that Black was an illegal animagus. If possible, run away. At worst, I'll run away with him, to the Far East, or to the other side of the Atlantic. With this thought in mind, Alexis stuffed the newspaper into the drawer, hummed a song, and started marking homework. The same newspaper was also seen by the three Harrys who were having dinner in the restaurant. The three of them looked at each other, hurriedly finished their meal, and returned to the Gryffindor common room. Gryffindor common room. In the corner, the three of them took the newspaper and read it carefully, not letting go of any word. Just had a quick glance at the restaurant. This report by the Evening Prophet was very important to Harry. It was the first time that he had such close, real and comprehensive exposure to news about his parents. In the past, the news was fragmented and obtained sporadically from other places. It took him to work hard to piece it together, so that he could have a vague idea of his parents and the events that happened that night 11 years ago. It is precisely because of this huge information gap that Harry is like a kitten in a new environment, full of uneasy vigilance about everything. It was also because of his lack of understanding of the past that Harry had doubts about Alexis. In fact, Harry himself was unwilling to doubt Alexis. What he felt from Alexis was a kind of father-like care that he had lacked since he was a child. He is unwilling to lose this love more than anyone else. Now, this newspaper has the possibility to retain this love. No one of the three little guys spoke. They were all reading the report carefully, clicking on each letter with indescribable emotions. 2 hours later, Hermione was the first to put down the newspaper. Another 10 minutes later, Ron and Harry put down the newspapers almost at the same time. It seems we mistakenly blamed Mr. Alexis. Ron breathed a sigh of relief and whispered. It was almost bedtime, and the little Gryffindor lions were rushing back one after another. There were a lot of students passing by, so they had to lower their voices. Harry nodded in agreement. This report, combined with the sporadic information they had previously investigated, made Harry feel that he had touched the truth. His parents, James Potter and Lily Potter, are Alexis's good friends. They have known each other since they were studying at Hogwarts and are close friends. There is also the Sirius Black mentioned in the newspaper, and the deceased Peter Pettigrew. They might have been like themselves now, gathering in the corner of the Gryffindor common room, and plotting their own little secrets. Later, Mr. Alexis had a quarrel with his parents and left, and on the recommendation of Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew rejoined. But Peter Pettigrew betrayed his parents, which directly led to their death. Judging from the description of the article, Sirius Black should have also been deceived, and he paid the price for it, by being imprisoned in Azkaban prison. Then Peter Pettigrew was captured by Mr. Alexis, and thrown into Azkaban prison. Sirius Black waited for the opportunity for revenge. Harry even thought about why Alexis' mood suddenly changed when they were on the Hogwarts Express to Hogwarts, and she was desperate to capture Ron's pet Scabbers. He recognized Scabbers as Peter Pettigrew. Maybe, Hermione said suddenly. This is just a newspaper report. The authenticity is questionable. How do you? Ron looked at Hermione in confusion. He didn't understand. Why did Hermione, who had always supported Alexis, now take the initiative to raise doubts? I'm just raising a possibility, Hermione said seriously. My father said that the news in newspapers is not accurate. In order to sell sales, the media will deliberately make up stories with bizarre twists and turns to attract people's attention. The three were silent. After finally getting the information, Hermione's words brought them back to the starting point. Should you trust newspapers? The three of them had no answer. After discussing for a while, bedtime came and the three of them dispersed. Chapter 72, Debt Repayment. Monday, sunny and sunny. This is very rare for the rainy Britain. Alexis, who had stayed up almost all night, had a good sleep. After breakfast, he returned to the office leisurely, preparing to pick up the lesson plan and go to class. His first class starts at 10 o'clock. As soon as he opened the office door, he saw Horn standing on the lesson plan, turning his flexible head and looking straight at him. Alexis was a little embarrassed. The moment he saw Horn, he thought of what he had agreed to last week. He took Horn's jerky to bribe Blue away, but was caught by Horn. For this reason, he promised to make up for Horn over the weekend, and Horn let him go. Unfortunately, he was too busy on the weekend and he failed to fulfill his promise. Cuckoo. Horn tilted his head, stared at his background eyes, and screamed dissatisfiedly at Alexis. Sorry, I was too busy last week to take care of it. Alexis spread his hands and tried to explain. Horn, as you saw, I was grading homework last night and didn't go to bed until almost 3 o'clock. Cuckoo. Cuckoo. Horn didn't care. He was in the wings and pointed to the wooden box beside him, making it clear that he was asking Alexis for the dried meat he promised. Can you give me a few days of grace? Alexis discussed with a smile. This weekend, even if the end of the world comes, I will make it up for you. How about it? Horn retracted his wings, lied his head, and stared at Alexis for a while, flapped his wings, and landed next to the wooden box. He opened the wooden box deftly, took out a piece of dried meat from inside and swallowed it. Cuckoo. Cuckoo. Obviously, Alexis doesn't have much credibility with Horn anymore. Last time, Alexis raised her hands and cried out. Didn't I fulfill the promise I made last time in the Far East? Have you forgotten that we ate roasted whole lamb on the grassland? 4 years ago. Alexis now regretted raising Horn to be so smart. When was it 4 years ago? Cuckoo cuckoo. Horn immediately became excited and kept chirping. Oh, when did you say we went to steal the eggs of the Hungarian horntail? Alexis listened for a while before he understood. Didn't we fail every time? If we didn't steal the eggs of the Hungarian horntail, your contribution to the cover would be lost. Cuckoo cuckoo cuckoo. Horn became even more excited and didn't even bother to eat the dried meat. He jumped on his feet and flapped his wings, sometimes patting his wings and sometimes his belly. You said you were injured? Alexis put on a rogue attitude and began to lie. I'm injured too. I didn't expect there to be 5 Hungarian horntails. I almost died there. Look, you were seriously injured and couldn't fly for several months, and I was also recovering from my injury in bed for a month. We both suffered, right? This makes it even, don't you think? Horn's flapping movement stopped abruptly, and it tilted its head and stared at Alexis with a puzzled look on its face. Look, we were all injured, and we didn't get any benefits, right? Alexis saw that Horn was involved and prepared to continue his efforts. So, you shouldn't ask me for dried meat, because the extra 3 Hungarian horntails, your jerky is gone, isn't it? Horn nodded subconsciously, feeling that what Alexis said seemed right point. If it hadn't been for the sudden appearance of 3 other Hungarian horntails, the dragon egg would have been obtained long ago, and it would not have been injured. Alexis would not have been lying in bed for a month. During this month, it would have chosen all the dried meat. Good styles are ready to bake, but it always felt like something was wrong. Let's do it this way. I'll make it for you this week. If it's a week late, I'll double it. How about that? Seeing that Horn was completely stunned, Alexis quickly ended the topic. I have to go to class now. I'm going to be late. Alexis picked up the lesson plan and rushed out. That's it, Horn. Boom. The office door was closed. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Horn muttered a few words in confusion, silently picked up a piece of dried meat and swallowed it, and carefully counted the remaining quantity. When he saw that there was no shortage, he locked the wooden box with satisfaction, spread his wings and left. Alexis wiped her sweat and trotted into the noisy classroom. The third year wizards are as always. They don't have the pressure of the OWL exam for the time being, and they don't have the discomfort of first year students. They are at home like a fish in water and have no worries. In the classroom, the little wizards gathered together in 2s and 3s to discuss. After seeing Alexis, they reluctantly ran back to their seats. Alexis stood on the podium and waited for a while. Seeing that all the little wizards were sitting down obediently, Alexis started to teach. With the seats prepared for the 2 classes last week, the 3rd grade wizards have gradually adapted to it, and Alexis' class is no longer as difficult as it was at the beginning. After a class, homework was left, and after Alexis announced that get out of class was over, the little wizards hurriedly packed up their textbooks and ran out of the classroom in small groups. It's almost 12 o'clock. It's time for lunch. In the afternoon, Alexis walked into the classroom holding her homework with a serious look on her face. He has 2 classes on Monday, the 3rd and 4th grade classes in the morning and the 1st and 2nd grade classes in the afternoon. Alexis was in a bad mood. On the one hand, it is because of the homework given by the 1st grade wizards. He was busy until about 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday, correcting 1st grade homework. On Monday last week, he asked the 50 little wizards in the 1st grade to write a paper on the relationship and difference between potions and pharmacy. His original intention was to make the young wizards deeply aware of the difference in potions. This is a course that is closely related to the knowledge structure system of the Muggle world and is different from all other courses at Hogwarts. This is a difference in thinking. If you want to learn the course of pharmacy well, you need to change your thinking. You cannot look at pharmacy with wizard thinking. In that case, it will be impossible to learn this course well. Unfortunately, the little wizards didn't seem to understand his good intentions. Most of the assignments handed in by the little wizards were empty and lackluster. Their papers were almost copied from the potions and pharmacy textbooks, and then forcibly glued together. In Alexis' view, that was the ugly Stitch monsters have no thoughts of their own. And there are only a small number of articles with occasional highlights, but they have not been explored in depth. Chapter 73, Come on, Snape. Of course, if that was all, he wouldn't be so angry. The real reason that made him angry was that the homework of several Slytherin students was almost a piece of shit. Alexis was sure that it wasn't that they couldn't write good articles, they just didn't want to. These Slytherins' homework is not even as good as the Stitch monster in front of them. And more importantly, Alexis learned during lunch that just last week, he had just deducted 3 points from Slytherin, and in the next potions class, Snape deducted 3 points from Slytherin. He scored 6 points against Gryffindor, all because of Harry and the other 3. If it is a serious question, and they fail to answer it, points will be deducted. The key is that Alexis learned that the question Snape asked in class was how to make Polyjuice potion. Alexis wanted to grab Snape by the collar and ask him not to mention the first year, just the second year Slytherin. Just grab anyone and ask them how to prepare Polyjuice potion. Let's see how many can answer. Did you come into contact with that stuff in the 1st grade? A first year wizard probably doesn't even know what Polyjuice potion is, right? What is this? This is naked revenge. This is a declaration of war! Exclamation mark. Alexis believed that, if he didn't fight, the crazy Snape might continue to expand the battlefield, and eventually not only the three Harrys, but even Hufflepuff would be unlucky. After all, this is Slytherin's tradition. This is not okay, it must be deducted. As for Alexis himself, why was it that Harry and the other three couldn't answer the question? Just because Malfoy said one more thing, he deducted points that should have been given to Gryffindor on Slytherin. Is this a problem? No problem. Alexis put her homework on the desk and just stared at the noisy classroom in silence, without saying a word. He just stood on the podium, staring silently at the messy classroom below. The little wizards were not aware of Alexis' arrival at first, and they gathered together in small groups to excitedly discuss Harry's new broom. It was a broom they had never seen before, and it was faster and more stable than the Light Wheel series currently recognized as the fastest. As early as last week's Quidditch flying training class, when Harry took out the firebolt as a conceptual trial broomstick, Harry and his firebolt became the focus of discussion among the young wizards. His move even attracted the attention of Mrs. Huoki. For this reason, Malfoy even cursed Harry viciously, hoping that Harry would fall off his broomstick. Unfortunately, young Master Malfoy's hopes were dashed once again. Harry perfectly inherited his father's talent. He showed his very high talent in flying during the first level Quidditch flying practice class. When other little wizards couldn't even wake up their brooms, he could even wake them up. Control the broom to fly in a circle at low altitude. After class, many young wizards came over to chat with Harry and ask about the firebolt point. For this reason, Harry could only shake his head in embarrassment and said that it was given to him by the elders in the family. Broomsticks are as fatally attractive to wizards as the top luxury cars and even private jets in the Muggle world are to ordinary people. Every wizard, especially male wizards, dreams of riding a broomstick and flying freely in the sky, leaving everyone behind. The kind of passion brought by speed is far beyond what magic spells or potions can bring. Unfortunately, Alexis is in the minority. When he was in school, he didn't quite understand why James and the others were so keen on Quidditch flying practice lessons. Alexis, who learned to fly early, always felt that flying lessons were a waste of time. Because of this, Mrs. Hooch became one of the few teachers at Hogwarts who didn't like Alexis. Alexis said nothing, and it was already 5 minutes before class started. The little wizard in front finally noticed the arrival of Alexis and his gloomy expression. The little wizard shrank his neck, not daring to delay any longer, and hurriedly ran back to his seat. 15 minutes later, all the little wizards in the classroom finally realized Alexis' arrival and returned to their seats, and the classroom became quiet. Alexis still didn't speak. He stood on the podium, his eyes scanning back and forth, and his eyes wandered back and forth in every corner of the classroom. The little wizard stared at Alexis with wide eyes, not daring to make any sound for fear of making Alexis furious at the next moment. Another 10 minutes passed, and it was already 25 minutes into class. The classroom was still quiet, and the atmosphere began to become solemn and depressing. Some little wizards were already stiff, but still did not dare to move. Darn, finally, Alexis withdrew her gaze and tapped her homework book lightly. How the whole classroom breathed a sigh of relief. What's up with him? Ron, who was sitting in the middle seat, asked Harry with his eyes. How do I know? He is scarier than Snape, so scary. Harry shook his head. I read your homework. Alexis began to speak in a low tone. Originally, I thought that after the 2 classes last week, you would have a new understanding of pharmacy. I thought you would take my homework seriously. In order for you to finish your homework, I even gave you 5 days and postponed the deadline until Friday night. But you guys let me down so much. Alexis grabbed the exercise book on top, opened it and started reading aloud. Potions doesn't require silly waving of wands. Here, we don't need to figure out the beauty of slow simmering. Alexis read a paragraph, put down her homework, and looked up at a Slytherin who was shrinking his neck. Mr. Crabbe, I've heard of Snape's speech, this cliché he used in every new student's first potions class. Yes, that's right. I know the source of these words you wrote. Is this your experience? Little fatty Crabbe lowered his head and was speechless. What I need is your knowledge, not a corny speech from some corny professor. 1 point deducted from Slytherin. Chapter 74, Slytherin, 17 points deducted. Alexis then picked up another assignment and continued the public execution. Botanical classification comes from the Muggle world. It has developed for thousands of years and has formed a complete system in the Muggle world. As early as the early days of human civilization, people unconsciously distinguished plants according to taxonomic methods. Mr. Draco Malfoy. Alexis put Malfoy's homework next to Crabbe's. I know this passage because I wrote it. I'm grateful to Mr. Draco Malfoy for recognizing my point of view, but unfortunately, Draco, I'm asking for your knowledge, not mine. So, 1 point is deducted from Slytherin. Next, Alexis continued to read, deducting 1 point from Slytherin for each book he read. Soon, all 17 Slytherins were wiped out. Strangely enough, even Alexis himself did not expect that 17 Slytherins would sign up for his course. This number far exceeded Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, and was only less than Hufflepuff. 5 people. With so many people, it was very convenient for Alexis to deduct points. None of the little wizards in Slytherin completed their homework seriously. Even Draco Malfoy, who had high hopes from Alexis. I just randomly copied some passages from the textbook and handed them in to fool me. Therefore, Slytherin was deducted 17 points. After reading the last Slytherin homework, Alexis paused for a moment and glanced at the entire audience, making the little wizards below tremble in fear. I won't read the next assignment one by one. Points will be deducted for any poorly written assignments. 2 points from Ravenclaw. 2 points deducted from Hufflepuff. No points will be deducted from Gryffindor. You should thank Miss Hermione Granger and Justin Finch-Fletchley and a few others. Their papers were very good. This saved you from deducting more points. For today's assignment, all students who have received points deduction should rewrite the paper and hand it to me before Wednesday. Remember, I require each of you to write this paper well and write something of your own. If you still get confused next time, I will deduct 2 points for each person and 3 points for the next time until I'm satisfied. After saying that, Alexis ignored the wails of the little wizards below and started class. We talked about classification in the last class. Now let's continue. Turn the book to page 7. Let's review the content of the previous class first. Alexis continued the class, and this time the little wizards did not dare to take it lightly. They all paid all their attention and listened carefully. Facts have proved that the little wizards are not stupid, they are just playful and unable to concentrate. Once effective punishment measures are taken, the learning efficiency of the little wizards will increase rapidly. At the end of the class, even though Alexis wasted an hour of lecture time, the overall progress did not slow down at all, and he still finished the lecture as scheduled. This pleased Alexis. Coupled with the fact that Slytherin was deducted 17 points in class, Alexis' mood changed from gloomy to bright. After class, Alexis packed up her lesson plans and was just about to leave when she looked up and saw Harry and 3 people standing in front of her. Harry, what's the matter? Harry was a little hesitant, and with the encouragement of his friends, he whispered, Mr. Alexis, I want to ask about my parents. I saw that article in yesterday's Evening Prophet. Alexis took out her pocket watch, looked at it, and interrupted him with a frown. You can come to my office to discuss this matter tonight. I remember you still have classes to attend, so go to class first. Harry was silent for a moment, nodded, and turned to leave. Alexis watched Harry leave and returned to the office with the lesson plan under his arm. After thinking for a long time, he got up and went straight to the principal's office. Password: sizzling honey candy, cold as a soda, ice lemonade, toffee finger cakes, cockroach heap jam. Alexis counted several of Dumbledore's favorite snacks and didn't know which one was correct. Anyway, he triggered the mechanism and entered the office smoothly. When he walked into the office, Dumbledore was lying in front of a big basin and didn't know what he was looking at. When he saw Alexis coming in, he quickly got up. Alexis glanced at the large basin hidden behind Dumbledore and said nothing more. He had played with the pensieve as a child. It contains the memories of past principals. This is the best history of magic teacher that can let you understand the history of Hogwarts in just a few minutes. Dumbledore also tried to use a pensieve to find out Alexis's life experience, but Alexis, who had been warned by Grindelwald, escaped, and he even almost knocked over the pensieve. "What's wrong, Alex?" Dumbledore moved the pensieve and put it back in the cupboard. Alexis stood for a while, then silently went up to help. Although Dumbledore's magical attainments are very high, after all, he is already an old man over 100 years old. "Harry came to ask me about James and Lily." Alexis held the pensieve, waiting for Dumbledore to open the cabinet, and whispered, "Has he read last night's Evening Prophet?" Dumbledore slowly opened the cabinet and moved it to one side, waiting for Alexis to put the pensieve in and lock it again. Then he slowly walked back to the chair and sat down. He took out a candy from the drawer and threw it into his mouth. Inside, he squinted his eyes and slowly took it in his mouth. "Well, I've seen it." The candy seemed a bit sweet, so Dumbledore opened the soda and took a sip. The sour taste immediately filled the entire office. "He's been looking up your records, Alex. It's up to you to decide whether to tell him all of it, tell him part of it, or tell him nothing at all. It's up to you. This is a matter between you and your partners, and it should be your decision." Alexis looked up at Dumbledore in surprise. He suspected that Dumbledore was Grindelwald pretending to be. Could it be that old man Grindelwald couldn't help but attack? Where is Dumbledore? Imprisoned by him on Nurmengard Island? Looking at Alexis with a dull look on his face, Dumbledore slowly smiled. "Alex, because I have always restrained your behavior, you have been particularly afraid of me since you were a child. You have not been close to me, and you are not even willing to treat me with half the attitude you did towards Grindelwald." Seeing Alexis coming back to his senses and seeming to say something, Dumbledore raised his hand to signal Alexis to continue listening to him. Chapter 75. I have already thought of my grandson's name. I remember that, when I first saw you in Nurmengard, you were this tall. Dumbledore gestured with his hands, looking nostalgic. "When you saw me landing on the island, your eyes were wide open and your face was blank, just like before. When I was still wondering where Gellert abducted a child from, you suddenly ran away, shouting, 'The bad guy is coming, Grindelwald, old man, run quickly, bad old man, coming to catch you.' When I walked to the castle, you were holding your wand nervously, protecting Gellert behind you. You looked brave." Alexis couldn't help but smile when she talked about her childhood. That was the first time he met Dumbledore. At that time, Dumbledore was already dressed in this strange way. One is a handsome old man who is energetic, and the other is a strange old man with eccentric tastes. He takes it for granted that the strange old man is a bad guy. Moreover, at that time, he only knew Grindelwald as Grindelwald, and did not know that Dumbledore was Dumbledore. He thought it was Grindelwald's men or officials from the Wizengamot. Dumbledore talked a lot about Alexis' childhood. When talking about these things, it was obvious that Dumbledore missed him very much. After all, when Alexis was a child, he once admired Dumbledore because of his memory. But later on, Dumbledore became very strict with him, which gradually caused the two to drift apart. "No matter what, Alex, you know I always wish you the best," Dumbledore said sadly. "I thought a lot yesterday. Maybe I was a failed adoptive father and guardian, and I was too strict with you. I hope you don't." Dumbledore paused, seemingly distracted. After a while, he came back to his senses. "So, you decide your own affairs. I will try not to interfere too much in your own affairs from now on." Northern England, outside Yorkshire. A plump beauty was walking down the street with a stern expression. She was holding a wooden stick in one hand, and her windbreaker was blowing in the wind. The woman wore a hat, covering her short blonde hair. In front of the woman, several slovenly men were running away in confusion. "Christy, you crazy bitch. What are you going to do?" The man dressed as a homeless man turned around and cursed while running with a lame leg. "We have always abided by the law and haven't done anything harmful, right? Why do you keep chasing us? Do you really want to kill them all?" Christy kept walking, raised her leather-gloved hand, and spat out a magic spell from her wand, hitting a man in the back of the heart. The man froze on the spot, let out a short scream, and then fell to the ground. Kidnapping muggles with the intention of killing them, and attempted murder. This is not law-abiding behavior. Christy walked up to the man who was hit, paused for a moment, and continued chasing. It was those muggles who attacked us first. We just wanted to steal some food, and we were even willing to give them work as compensation, so they could attack us first. The lame man screamed, seeing Christy getting closer and closer. He yelled sternly and inwardly, "Do you really want to kill them all? What's wrong with us? Is it because we are werewolves? Becoming a werewolf is not something we can decide. Don't come here." The man backed away in horror, his expression becoming more and more panicked. Alexis walked about 10 meters in front of the man and stopped. Of course not. Christy took off her gloves, held the wand tightly in her palm, and kept looking around. "Okay, don't play this trick. Did you bring me here because this is your home base?" At this time, they had entered the territory of Yorkshire, and more than a dozen people walked out of the surrounding stores. These people kept approaching Christy with evil smiles. "You are not a wandering werewolf tribe, are you? I'm afraid you have some other purpose in going to London, right? Bring me here. Can you capture me with these people?" Christy said, looking past the approaching werewolves and stopping at a person in front of the second floor window opposite. A look of surprise flashed across her face. The man on the second floor, after seeing Christy, especially making eye contact with Christy, squatted down in panic and disappeared by the window. "Christy, you're not right." The lame man no longer needed to disguise himself. He took off his mask of panic and helplessness, and his expression became increasingly ferocious. This is his tribe's base camp, and here are his people. He doesn't believe that this annoying aura can defeat a dozen werewolves. In order to lure this woman over, they injured several brothers. If the leader hadn't said she was very useful, he would have twisted this woman's neck off long ago. "So, before you kill me, can you tell me your purpose of going to London?" Christy asked solemnly, holding her wand tightly. Her eyes were not on the lame man, but continued to stare at the second floor window. She felt that the figure was very familiar, similar to a certain Gryffindor who didn't talk much. It can't really be him, can it? Could it be that he also became a werewolf? Alexis should be heartbroken. "No. I'll get rid of him here, and then get rid of all these werewolves, so that this secret will remain forever, and the whereabouts of this Gryffindor will forever remain a mystery in Alexis' world." I heard that Alexis was back and teaching at Hogwarts. This bastard didn't even know to come see me when he came back. Fortunately, I have been prepared. Rufus should have delivered the gift I carefully prepared to Alexis, right? I wish I could see his expression when he opened the gift. Oops, when will bastard Alexis finally come to her senses? The lame man looked at Christy, who alternately giggled and frowned, dumbfounded. Is this female cousin who has been chasing him all the way sick? "Christy, we can talk." The werewolf successfully surrounded Christy, and a tall and fierce man pushed the lame man away and said in a rough voice, "Talk about what?" Christy asked absently. It's over now. It's over now. I can't wait to go back to London to meet Alexis. Maybe he will be moved to tears after seeing my gift, and then hug me deeply after seeing me." In just a few seconds, Christy had already thought of her grandson's name. His name is York Felix. To commemorate the turning point of his love affair with Alexis here in Yorkshire, the second grandson is named Hogsmeade to commemorate their meeting. The grandson's name is James Felix, in memory of the annoying James. Forget it. Who made him Alexis's good brother? Forgive him. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.